Thomas didn't die of a heart attack, Vivian. He died of the secrets he's kept from you for 15 years. The teacup in my hand trembled, the steam rising in thin wisps, as if choking my throat. The almond cookies I'd baked the night before still sat on the china plate, sweet and ironically perfect, as if waiting for someone who would never show up. 7 o'clock, the familiar moment Thomas walked through the door, but the door remained closed. There was only silence, thick and oppressive, signaling that my world had just shattered. My name is Vivian Carter. For 15 years, I believed I had the kind of marriage people admired from afar. Thomas was steady, grounded, the man who filled a room without raising his voice. Accomplished, reliable. He carried himself like someone who belonged everywhere. The crisp button-downs, flowers on Sundays, the mortgage handled, so I never had to worry. He never faltered. He was never late. He made the ordinary look effortless. We never had children, but life with him flowed like a stream without obstacles. We were puzzle pieces that clicked perfectly, or so I thought. What I didn't know, what I was about to discover, was that the puzzle had gaps. Spaces he never allowed me to see. Places I was never meant to step into. Thomas died on a Thursday. They said it was a heart attack. The doctor's face, gentle but practiced, spoke the words like lines rehearsed 1,000 times. Massive myocardial infarction. He went quickly. I nodded like I understood, like it mattered. But it didn't. Not when your world shatters in a single breath. The funeral was a blur. Black clothing blending together. Polite voices offering condolences. Faces I didn't know telling me what a remarkable man my husband had been. I clung to Claire, my best friend since college. The one constant who pressed water into my hands, food onto my plate. I drank nothing. I ate nothing. Then Rachel arrived. My sister. Her perfume too sweet, her hug lingering too long. "I'm so sorry, sis," she whispered. Her voice smoothed over the words like silk on glass. Thomas was like a brother to me. I wanted to believe her. God, I tried. But something in her eyes, it wasn't grief. Later, in my kitchen, she poured herself a drink with the ease of someone at home. "I know it's not the time," she said, casual, "but Thomas loaned me money. I thought maybe we could settle that now." I stared at her. "What money?" I asked. She blinked, smiled like I was a child. "Oh, I guess he never told you." Something twisted inside me, a crack I couldn't ignore. That night, I walked the house like a restless ghost. I ran my fingers over polished floors, over bookshelves lined with the life we built, over the wedding photo that suddenly felt like it belonged to strangers. I was searching for something, though I didn't know what. And then I saw them. His keys. Sitting on the hallway table. My hand closed around them, and there it was, the one key he never let me touch. A key shaped differently. The garage key. I had asked once, years ago. He smiled, brushing it off. "Nothing interesting in there. Just tools, grease. You wouldn't like it." I didn't press. That was our marriage. Comfortable. Easy. But filled with quiet spaces where I was not allowed. Now, I had nothing left to lose. The next morning, I drove to the address. The garage sat hidden in the industrial district, surrounded by crumbling buildings, rusted roofs, weeds curling through broken asphalt. Not the kind of place you'd expect a man like Thomas to be. Yet every Thursday he came here. Like clockwork. I never questioned it. The metal door was heavier than I expected. The key groaned in the lock. My hand trembled as I pushed it open. I stood still for a moment, afraid of what waited inside. The smell hit first, dust, oil, and something older, something secret. I reached for the light switch. And froze. This was no garage. No tools.
No boxes.
No car parts. It was a shrine. A shrine to a life I never knew existed. The fluorescent lights flickered on, pale and unkind, revealing walls covered entirely, every inch, with photographs, maps, clippings, hand-drawn charts. On one wall, dozens of photos lined up in neat rows. Obsessive. Meticulous. And in each one, Thomas. Not the Thomas the first knew. Not the polished man in tailored suits. Here he was different: jeans, casual shirts, hair unkempt. His face softer, his body less guarded. And always beside the same woman. She was younger. Striking. Dark hair, sharp eyes that seemed to cut through the paper itself. Their closeness stung. The way her hand rested on his arm, the way he smiled at her. Smiles I hadn't seen in years. I stepped closer.
A beach. A ski lodge.
A candlelit dinners. Each photo stamped with a time, a year. 7 years ago.
5. 3.
And then one from just a few months earlier. August 2024. I froze. My stomach turned. That same day, I was home, cooking his favorite meal, waiting for him to return from a client meeting. But here he was in a photograph, smiling with her. And with a young man, early 30s, beside them. They looked like a family. On the back, in his handwriting, Isabel and Logan. August 2024. My knees buckled. I caught myself on the cold edge of a metal desk. Papers lay scattered across it. Stacks of files. Bank transfers. Corporate records. Letters from overseas firms. Tax documents I didn't recognize. A life built in shadows. The man I thought I knew had been a stranger all along. In one folder, I found it. A medical report. The paper was thin, the ink clinical, detached. My eyes caught the header. Crescent Heart Institute. The date, less than 2 months ago. Then his name, printed in bold at the top. My husband's name. The diagnosis blurred before my eyes. Ischemic heart disease. Stage 3. Risk of sudden cardiac arrest. He knew. My knees weakened. My throat burned. Thomas knew he was dying. He had known all along. And instead of telling me, instead of preparing me, he chose silence. He spent his final days building a secret life. With another woman. Another home. Another family. That boy in the photograph, it had to be their son. My stomach twisted violently. 15 years. 15 years of loyalty, of trust, of loving a man who had lived 2 lives. The man I buried wasn't really my husband. He was a stranger. A stranger who, just a night before his death, pressed a velvet box into my hand, kissed my cheek, and whispered, "You're the only one for me." The memory made my chest ache as I staggered toward the door, desperate for air. I couldn't breathe. The room closed in, my vision narrowing, my heart racing.
Who was I now?
A widow, yes. But a widow of whom? That's when I heard it. Footsteps. Soft, hesitant, deliberate, like someone trying not to be heard. My head snapped toward the doorway, my pulse pounding so loud I barely registered the shape standing there. It was him, the young man from the photograph. Same dark hair, same sharp jaw, eyes that carried the same piercing weight as Thomas's. Vivian Carter? His voice was calm, steady. My own voice caught in my throat. I didn't answer. He stepped forward slowly, as if approaching a wounded animal. "I thought you might come here. My name is Logan Myers."
A pause.
Then the words that cracked the floor beneath me. Thomas Carter was my father. I gripped the desk behind me, knuckles white, holding onto the only solid thing left in my crumbling world. Words failed me. All I could do was stare, searching, comparing. And then I saw it. The same eyes. The same silence that spoke louder than anything he could say. "You're really his son," I whispered, my voice raw. "Yes," he said firmly. "And I'm sorry. I never wanted you to find out like this." My throat closed. "How long?" I asked, barely audible. "My whole life," he answered.
Noche se taschen. No epalegi.
He never told me much, only that he was married, that you didn't know about me. He kept us apart. My mother, Isabel, respected that. She never wanted to interfere. But after she died last year, everything changed. The word hit me like a blow.
Died. So she was gone too.
Another ghost in his trail of secrets. My body sank into the dusty chair by the desk. My legs refused to hold me anymore. "Why are you here?" I asked, my voice hollow. Why today? Logan slid the backpack from his shoulder, pulled out a folded document, edges yellowed. He held it out, his hand steady. This is a draft of a will. Unfinished. My father gave it to me 2 weeks before he died. He said the official one would go to you. But this was just in case. My hands shook as I unfolded the paper. My eyes traced the familiar loops of Thomas's handwriting, the same curves he used on birthday cards and little notes left on the counter. Lines divided assets. Mentions of Logan. And then something that made my breath stop. A reference to a company I had never heard of, Mercury South Holdings. And one more note, access to remaining documents secured in office vault. Code linked to personal item gifted to V. I froze. Personal item. Gifted to me. The necklace. My hand flew to my collarbone, even though the sapphire necklace wasn't there. I had left it at home, tucked in its velvet box because it felt too heavy to wear. Now it felt heavier than ever. What is Mercury South Holdings? I asked, my eyes still scanning. Logan exhaled, as if bracing himself. One of his private firms. Not on public record. He used it to move money, internationally. After my mom died, I started digging. There were transfers I couldn't trace. Offshore accounts in my name I never opened. I think he was trying to secure something. For you. For me. For both of us. My mouth went dry. Why? Because he knew time was running out, Logan said quietly. His gaze dropped, then hardened. And because he didn't trust the people he worked with. My heart stumbled. What people? Logan's face darkened. He never gave me names. Only that if something happened to him, someone would come looking. For information. For leverage. For whatever he left behind. The room shifted around me. A second safe. A company I'd never heard of. A necklace that wasn't just jewelry but a key. And the man I loved for 15 years, who had built an entire world without me. So you're saying, I whispered, that the photos, the will, the files, this is only the beginning. Logan nodded slowly. He left things behind. Not just secrets. Protection. For us. I rose unsteadily, scanning the room one last time. The photos. The documents. The maps. This wasn't a shrine anymore. It was evidence. A warning. I need to go home, I said, my voice hoarse. I need that necklace. Can I come with you? Logan asked, his tone careful. If you'll let me. I hesitated, the weight of his presence pressing against the edges of my grief. Then I nodded, because whether I wanted it or not, this was no longer my story alone. It was ours. But I couldn't go home just yet. The house felt unbearable. Too full. Too empty. So I called Claire. 20 minutes later, I was on her couch, hands wrapped around a mug of tea I couldn't drink. The sapphire necklace lay on the coffee table between us, gleaming under the soft lamplight. It didn't feel like a gift anymore. It felt like a grenade. Claire didn't ask questions. She never did. Not until I was ready. When I finally told Claire everything, the garage, the photos, Logan, the will, she didn't flinch. She didn't say I knew it or I told you so. She just squeezed my hand, her voice barely above a whisper.
I'm so sorry.
But I wasn't ready to cry.
Not yet.
The grief was still lodged somewhere deep, locked behind anger. I didn't need comfort. I needed answers. I needed someone to blame. So I drove. Straight to Rachel's condo. It sat on the north end of town, one of those pristine developments with coded gates, underground parking, concierge service. The kind of place my sister had no business affording, especially after years of complaining about money. My jaw tightened as the elevator rose. The higher it climbed, the hotter my fury burned. She opened the door barefoot, silk pajamas draped across her frame, a glass of wine in her hand. Makeup flawless. Hair styled. Like she had been waiting for someone. Maybe waiting for me. Well, if it isn't my grieving sister, she said, smirking. Come to inspect the widow's inheritance. Cut the crap, Rachel. My voice cracked sharp. We need to talk. I pushed past her into the condo. My eyes scanned the room and froze on a framed photo sitting on a side table. Thomas. With her. Both of them laughing, champagne glasses raised in a toast. The date in the corner made bile rise in my throat. 5 years ago. What the hell is this? I demanded, pointing at it. Rachel walked over slowly, sipping her wine like it was all a game. That? Company holiday party. You were too tired to come, remember? Thomas didn't want to go alone, so he asked me. That's all. She said it like it was nothing. Like sharing champagne with my husband while I stayed home folding laundry was perfectly acceptable. We always got along so well, she added, her tone casual. I turned, my voice dropping lower, sharper. How well, exactly? Her smirk faltered. I know about Isabel, I said, stepping closer. I know about Logan. About the garage. The company. The will. I know everything. So, if there's more, you better tell me now. Rachel's eyes narrowed. She walked to her liquor cart, refilled her glass, and set it down with care. Then her hand moved slowly to her stomach. Fine, she said softly. You want the truth?
I'm pregnant.
And it's Thomas's. The world tilted. I couldn't move.
Couldn't speak.
10 weeks, she continued, her tone almost proud. I found out a week before he died. He knew. He promised he'd take care of everything. He even told me he was planning to leave Isabel. My voice cracked. You were still seeing him? After Isabel died. She shrugged lightly, as if it were nothing. She was never meant to last. I was always the one who stayed. I felt myself leave my own body. The walls, the furniture, the hum of the refrigerator. All of it blurred into static. You slept with my husband? I whispered. Rachel didn't flinch. She just shrugged again. Don't act shocked. You had your perfect house. Your perfect meals at 7. Your perfect life. Meanwhile, I was drowning, paying rent late, working garbage jobs, listening to mom compare me to you like I was a failed copy. Then Thomas came along.
He helped.
He listened. Her eyes locked onto mine, suddenly sharp. You were his routine. I was his escape. The slap came before I even realized my hand had risen. Her head whipped to the side. The wine glass crashed onto the floor, shards glittering across the rug. But she didn't cry.
Didn't yell.
She just smiled. Now, there's the real Vivian, she said. Not the perfect wife. The woman who just realized she's been living a lie. My hands shook. My chest heaved. Why didn't you tell me? I whispered. Because you wouldn't have believed me, she shot back. You always thought I was jealous. Maybe I was. But this? Her gaze hardened. This was about me finally getting something of my own. You didn't take something, I said, my voice low. You stole everything. She stepped closer, her expression unreadable. Say what you want. But this baby? That's your family too, whether you want it or not. My throat tightened until it hurt.
Rage. Grief.
Betrayal. I wanted to scream. To break everything around me. Instead, the words fell out like broken glass. I'll honor what Thomas left in his will. Not for you. For the baby. Because that child didn't ask for this. Her eyes flickered. For the first time, her voice softened. You mean that? I don't know what I mean, I whispered. But I know this. I need to leave. I turned, ignoring the crunch of glass beneath my shoes. My fingers shook as they closed around the door handle. Behind me, Rachel's voice followed like poison. You think I'm the worst thing Thomas ever did? I didn't answer, because deep down I wasn't sure anymore. I didn't go home that night. I couldn't. The thought of that empty house, with its carefully set dinnerware and untouched bed, made me sick. Instead, I went back to Claire's. I held the sapphire necklace in my fist until it burned my skin. She opened the door, studied my face, and said only one thing. You need sleep. But sleep never came. Not when every room in my mind was caving in. The next morning, Logan pulled up outside. Claire insisted on coming along. "You're not walking into your husband's secret vault alone," she said, tossing her coat across her shoulders like armor. Thomas's office sat high in a downtown tower. He'd always called it a satellite space, somewhere private for meetings. I had never once set foot inside. Logan swiped us through security with a key card. "I'm listed as co-owner," he explained. The receptionist didn't even look up. My husband had built a world so carefully compartmentalized, no one ever asked questions. The elevator crept upward, every second dragging like hours. On the 14th floor, Logan led us into a glass-walled office.
Cold.
Modern. Sterile. No trace of me. Not a single photo.
No wodems.
Just sleek gray furniture and a faint cologne I didn't recognize. There. Logan pointed to a large, abstract painting hanging behind the desk. "The safe's behind that," Logan said, nodding toward the abstract painting. My hand trembled as I reached into my bag and pulled out the necklace. The sapphire glinted under the sterile office light, colder now than it had ever felt against my skin. My fingers found the hidden clasp. I twisted. Counterclockwise.
Click.
A compartment popped open at the back of the pendant. Inside, a thin metal plate, no larger than a SIM card, its edges engraved with a string of numbers. I felt the weight of it even though it barely weighed anything at all. Logan took it carefully, slid it into the keypad by the safe. A low beep. The lock released. The heavy door groaned open. Inside, the life Thomas never wanted me to see. Stacks of documents, crisp and clinical. A sleek black flash drive. A small wooden box. And a silver key on a tag. Bank safe deposit, Federal Trust. Logan picked up the documents first. His brows furrowed. Contracts. Transfers. Accounts. Some of these banks, they're overseas. He turned another page. He wasn't just hiding money. He was moving it.
Offshore. Fast.
My hand hovered over the flash drive, but I couldn't bring myself to plug it in. Not yet. Not here. Instead, I reached for the wooden box. It was light. Almost too light. When I lifted the lid, the air left my lungs. A ring. Gold band. Small diamond. Unmistakably intimate. But it wasn't mine. Inside the band, an inscription. And always. Not V.
Not me.
N. I whispered. For Isabel. Beside me, Claire gasped. Logan turned away, jaw clenched so tight, I thought it might crack. He bought her a ring, I said, my voice barely audible. He was going to propose. Or maybe he already had. I stood frozen, caught between disbelief and the sharp edge of reality. Because in that sterile, soulless office, I finally named the truth I had been too afraid to face. He loved her. Maybe he loved me too, in his own fractured way. But with her, he was real. He laughed. He smiled in photographs. He went on vacations. With me, it had been a performance. A husband polished to perfection. Dinners at 7. Roses on Sundays. And behind it all, a safe full of secrets. Logan's voice pulled me back. Vivian. He handed me a folded letter, my name scrawled on the front in Thomas's handwriting. My hands shook as I opened it.
Vivian.
If you're reading this, I'm gone. I never had the courage to tell you the truth. I was selfish. I built 2 lives because I couldn't give up either. And in the end, it cost me everything. I loved you. Maybe it sounds empty now, maybe it always was, but I did. In the only way I knew how. I wanted you to have peace. To be safe. That's why I left you the papers. The access. The truth. Do with them what you choose. Burn them. Bury them. Expose them. It's yours now. Forgive me if you can. If not, I understand. Thomas. I stared until the words blurred into nothing. Then I handed it to Claire. She read silently, lips pressed tight, then gave it to Logan. None of us spoke. Because what was there to say? The man we thought we knew had shattered into pieces, and all we could do was stand in the ruins. We left the office in silence. Not peace. Not acceptance. Just silence. the kind born from the absence of anything left to say. Claire drove. Logan sat beside me. I stared out the window as Charleston blurred past, the city sinking into autumn gray. My husband had lived a life I never touched. Now all of it sat in our hands. And somewhere out there, someone was watching. That night, I lay restless on Claire's pull-out couch. Sleep wouldn't come. The ceiling above me looked like a void. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. Vivian Carter? A man's voice. Yes, I whispered, pulse quickening. This is Gordon Blake. I was a business associate of your husband's. My stomach dropped. I believe you have something that belongs to me. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do, he said. His tone was calm, steady, terrifying. The documents from the safe. Some of them involve transfers I helped arrange. I suggest we meet. I'm not meeting anyone. You will, he said flatly. Because the others Thomas worked with? They're not as polite as I am. They don't ask. The line went dead. I stared at the ceiling until morning, my heart racing, dread pressing down like weight on my chest. When I told Logan, he cursed under his breath, pacing. He contacted me too. But there's more. He pulled a slip of paper from his pocket. Victor Crane. I read aloud. He says he's the original source of the money Thomas moved. He gave me a deadline. End of the week. If we don't return everything, Logan's voice dropped. Consequences. I didn't ask what kind. I didn't need to. Logan reached into his bag, held up the silver key from the safe. We still have the deposit box. Whatever's in there might explain who really owns what. My voice cracked. And what if it just makes things worse? Claire touched my arm. Then at least you'll know. The not knowing, that's what's tearing you apart. She was right. We made a plan. First, the bank. Then, if we still couldn't piece it together, we'd find someone who could. Someone Thomas trusted. Someone who knew what the hell he was doing. That's when Logan said, there's a name. My mother mentioned him once. Edward Holloway. My dad's old college friend. She said he was the only one who ever told Thomas the truth. Even when Thomas didn't want to hear it. Do you know where he is? I asked. I think so, Logan nodded. Mom kept his address in Savannah. Emergency contacts. So we drove. 2 hours in silence, rain streaking the windshield like broken memories. Savannah greeted us with its oak trees and damp air, the kind of stillness only Old Town carried. Edward's house rose before us, a tall brick wall of ivy, weathered and timeless, like something pulled straight out of a forgotten novel. When the door creaked open, an older man studied us with knowing eyes. You're Vivian, he said without hesitation. And you must be Logan. You knew we'd come? I asked. He only nodded. Edward's first words cut through me like a prophecy. If it all comes apart, they'll find you. He stepped aside, voice low, as though someone might already be listening. Come in. The house smelled of pipe smoke and old paper. Bookshelves pressed in from every wall, sagging under the weight of decades. A piano sat in the corner, polished but untouched, like it was waiting for a song that would never be played. Edward motioned for us to sit, then disappeared into another room. When he returned, his hand carried something small, deliberate, a sealed envelope. He left this with me, Edward said. His eyes never left mine. Said it was only to be opened if both of you came. Together. My chest tightened. I looked at Logan. He gave a single nod. My fingers tore the seal. Inside, 2 items. A short letter. And a will. Not the one I had already read. This one was different. My breath caught as I scanned the words. A child. Rachel's child. Thomas had named the unborn baby as heir. 25% of his private offshore accounts. To be held in trust until the child turned 21. The blood drained from my face.
He had planned for this.
Every detail. Even the child not yet born. I read the line again. Unborn child of Rachel Carter. 25%. The name wasn't hers. It wasn't Rachel who was given anything. It was the baby. Precise. Ruthless. Calculated. Why not Rachel? I asked Edward, my voice breaking. Because he trusted the child, Edward said gently. Not the mother. Logan shifted forward, tension stiffening his frame. This changes everything. It means she can't touch that money. Not legally. I stared at the second will again. My hands shook. And if she tries? Edward's gaze flicked toward the flash drive. Then you use that. From what Thomas told me, it holds everything, every transfer, every partner, every crime. If they push you, you push back. Claire exhaled, the sound sharp in the stillness. You have leverage. Her words sank into me, and for the first time since Thomas's death, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel like the betrayed wife left with ashes. I felt like the last person holding the blueprint, and that was power. Logan leaned closer. His voice was firm. Vivian, we stop reacting. We move first. Before Gordon. Before Crane. I nodded, slow but certain. The bank. Charleston shimmered gray by the time we arrived. The Federal Trust building stood between a law office and an old inn, quiet, unassuming. The kind of place you'd pass 100 times without seeing. Until suddenly, it mattered. Claire stayed in the car. Text if it gets weird, she said, half joking. Then added, and if they don't let you in, cry. No one says no to a woman crying in a bank. Logan smiled faintly. I didn't. Inside, the vault manager examined the silver key. His brow arched as he studied my ID. It's been years since this box was accessed. Registered under Mercury South Holdings. He led us underground, past heavy doors, through thick concrete. The deeper we went, the colder the air grew. Silence pressed in like stone. He handed me gloves. Standard procedure. We'll give you privacy.
The door closed.
Just me, Logan, and the box. My fingers trembled over the lock. Ready? Logan asked.
No, y whisperad.
And turned the key anyway. The box slid free. Not cash. Not passports. Not burner phones or stacks of bills. Just a manila folder. And a single photograph. The photo stopped me cold. Thomas, Logan, and Gordon Blake. Arms crossed, laughing, standing in front of a black SUV. And behind them, Victor Crane. My stomach twisted. They weren't just business associates. They were a team. Logan opened the folder. Dozens of documents. Shell companies. Payoffs. And one file stamped in bold red ink. Crane, blackmail insurance. It wasn't leverage. It was a loaded gun. Thomas kept proof, I whispered, of everything. And in that moment I understood.
He hadn't only left me a mess.
He had left me a weapon. And now it was my choice who to aim it at. We didn't go home. We went straight to a lawyer. Marcus Doyle, steady, discreet, allergic to drama. He had handled my father's estate. A man who didn't flinch. I told him everything. Almost everything. Not Rachel. Not the affair. Just the parts that mattered now. The accounts, the threats, the evidence. He didn't blink. Do you want to press charges? No, I said. I want insurance. He nodded. Then we copy everything.
Digital.
Physical. 3 backups. 1 here. 1 with you. 1 with someone outside your circle. I know the person, Claire said, her voice grim but steady. Hours passed as we scanned files. Names.
Dates. Wire transfers.
Fake invoices. The scope was staggering. This wasn't just shady. This was organized crime. International. And with Thomas gone, they thought the trail had vanished. They were wrong. By nightfall, Marcus drafted a letter. At the bottom, I added 1 line in my own handwriting. Try me. VC. We couriered it to Gordon Blake. 15 minutes later, the phone rang. His voice was venom. You think you're clever? You're in over your head. No, I said calmly. You are. Because my next call is the IRS. After that, Interpol. Silence. Then laughter.
All right.
What do you want?
Nothing, I said.
My voice didn't waver. No calls. No threats. You leave me and everyone I know alone. You touch us, and that folder goes public. Every file. Every signature. You don't want that kind of trouble.
I already have it, I said.
The difference is, I'm not afraid anymore. The line went dead. 2 hours later, Victor Crane called. His tone was different. Smooth, polished. Like a man used to charming his way through locked doors. Vivian, he said like we were old friends. I've heard about your discoveries. I think we're starting off on the wrong foot. There's no foot, I said. Just your signature on a dozen illegal transfers. He laughed softly. All hypothetical, of course. I let the silence stretch. Then I said, I know you think you can handle this, but here's the thing, Mr. Crane. I have no reputation to lose, no company to protect. I have nothing left of the life I knew, and that makes me very, very dangerous. That shut him up. I ended the call. Logan and I sat on Claire's porch that night, the flash drive in his pocket, a copy of the folder buried in the planter box behind us. Paranoid? Maybe. But when you've been lied to by the person you trusted most, paranoia starts to feel like survival. I didn't know he was capable of all this, Logan said quietly. My mom, she always said he was complicated. But I thought she meant sad, not corrupt. He was both, I said, and maybe more. I stared up at the stars, cold and steady above us. We're not done yet, I said. There's one more thing we haven't opened. Logan frowned. What? The flash drive. The flash drive was small, black, unmarked, like it had nothing to say unless you asked the right way. We didn't open it that night or the next morning. It took me 2 days. 2 days of preparing myself for whatever truth was still waiting. 2 days of rehearsing my reactions, as if practicing would make betrayal feel any less sharp. Logan sat beside me on the couch. Claire brought tea again. No one said a word as I plugged it in. A single folder appeared. For Vivian inside, one video file, dated just 10 days before Thomas's death. My fingers hovered, then clicked. The screen went black, then flickered to life. Thomas. Not the one I'd seen in wedding photos, or seated across from me at dinner. This Thomas looked hollow, eyes tired, shirt wrinkled, like he hadn't slept in weeks. He leaned forward. Vivian, he said, if you're watching this, it means I didn't make it. Or maybe I ran out of time. He sighed and rubbed his face. There's no easy way to say this, so I'll just say it. You were never the one I needed to hide things from. You were the one I wanted to protect. But I waited too long. And now everything's closing in.
He paused.
There's someone you need to be careful with. Someone you trust more than you should. My heart slowed. He looked straight into the camera. It's Rachel. The room went still. She wasn't just someone I slipped up with. It wasn't that simple. She planned this. From the beginning. The pregnancy wasn't just someone I slipped up with. It wasn't that simple. She planned this from the beginning. The pregnancy wasn't an accident. The night I told her I couldn't keep doing this, she changed. Said if I left her, she'd go public. With the money.
With the shell accounts.
With everything I'd buried to keep you safe. He leaned closer. I think she killed Isabel. My mouth went dry. I can't prove it, Thomas said, but the timing was too perfect. Isabel had just packed her bags, told me she booked a one-way flight to Lisbon. Then the car crashed. Single vehicle, no witnesses. The brakes failed, they said, but she had the car serviced the day before. He looked into the camera, his voice trembling. Rachel knew she was pregnant. Isabel didn't. That's what changed everything. An accident, they said. No foul play. But Rachel knew she was pregnant. And Isabel didn't. Claire covered her mouth. Logan's fists clenched. I tried to make it right, Thomas said. I moved the money, created backups, made sure that if something happened to me, you would have the power. I'm sorry it took this much damage for me to finally do the right thing. He looked away, then back again. I was weak, but you're not. And if you want to walk away from all of this, do it. Take what's yours and leave them in the dust. But if you don't, if you decide to fight back, don't do it alone. The screen froze, then cut to black. I sat there, unmoving, for what felt like hours. He knew. He knew what Rachel was capable of.
He knew what was coming.
And still, he tried to control the narrative even in death. Maybe out of guilt, maybe out of fear, but now he'd handed me the truth. And it was time to decide what to do with it. Rachel didn't know I'd seen the video. Not when I invited her to brunch. Not when I hugged her at the door, said how much I missed her, how we should talk like real sisters again. She smiled like a woman who thought she'd won. She wore a pale blue dress that hugged her belly, just right. He kicks when I drink orange juice, she said with a laugh, rubbing her hand over the bump. I smiled too, but my eyes didn't. We sat on the porch of Claire's house. Logan stayed inside. Claire poured sweet tea and left us alone. I'm glad you reached out, Rachel said, folding her hands neatly on her lap. I was worried you were angry. Why would I be angry? I asked softly because my husband was sleeping with my sister? Or because he left you part of the inheritance? Rachel blinked. That was the first crack. She shifted in her seat. Vivian, this is hard for both of us. Thomas was confused.
Torn.
But he loved you. No, I interrupted. He didn't love me. He pitied me. Rachel flinched. I leaned forward. And he feared you. Her face stilled. I placed the flash drive between us. Rachel's lips parted, just slightly. I know about the accounts. The manipulation. I know the accounts, the manipulation. I know he was planning to leave you. And I know about Isabel. She didn't blink, didn't move, just said, you can't prove anything. You're right, I replied. But I don't have to. Rachel's smile faltered. A single crease formed between her brows, small but sharp. She frowned, searching for footing. I rose slowly, every movement deliberate, steady. My voice was calm, unshaken. I'm not going to court. I'm not filing charges. I'm not begging some broken justice system to stitch this back together. I stepped closer, looked her dead in the eye. I'm walking away, and I'm leaving you here, with everything you thought you wanted. The money,
The child.
the lies you built your life on. Rachel pushed up from her chair, her voice rising. You think that scares me? I held her gaze, unblinking.
No.
But it will. I turned, left her standing on that porch, her polished calm cracking. Inside, Logan waited. His eyes said what his voice didn't. It's done. That afternoon, I sat across from Marcus Doyle once more.
No emotion. No hesitation.
I slid the flash drive across his desk.
Beside it, a signed affidavit.
One instruction, I told him. If anything happens to me, you release it. Everything. To the press. To the authorities. To anyone who'll listen. He nodded once. The weight shifted off me. The choice was no longer mine alone. I went back to the house. The one Thomas and I had filled with years of rituals, secrets, and illusions. It was silent now, too silent. I walked room to room. My fingertips brushed the edges of chairs, the grooves of door frames, the crack in the floorboard we always promised to fix. Ghosts of conversations clung to the walls. Laughter that had been a lie. Promises that had already rotted. I opened the closet. Took one suitcase. Left everything else. In the garage, I turned the key in the lock and pulled the door shut behind me. Not to hide, but to mark an ending. I wasn't coming back. A week later, I boarded a plane.
One way.
Destination, Colorado. A small cottage waited near the mountains. The air was cleaner there.
Thin, sharp, honest.
The kind of air that leaves no room for secrets. I signed a lease under my own name. No more hidden accounts. No more buried safes. No more pretending.
Just me.
Vivian Carter.
Widow.
Survivor. Not the woman who was deceived. Not the one left behind. The woman who carried silence and turned it into power. The flowers from the funeral hadn't even finished dying when the phone started ringing. I stood in my kitchen that Tuesday morning, 3 weeks after we lowered Russell into the ground, staring at a cup of coffee I couldn't bring myself to drink. The steam rose, curling into the air like something alive, but the mug in my hands felt wrong. It was the one Kathleen had given me years ago, with the words, "World's best grandma" in fading paint. Back then, it had made me laugh. Now it felt like it belonged to someone else. Everything felt like it belonged to someone else. The house, the air in the rooms, even my own face in the hallway mirror. The phone rattled against the counter again. I picked up, my voice sounding hollow in my own ears. Donald's voice came through, sharp and impatient. The same tone he'd used when he was 17 and begging for cash for gas. Except now, at 32, he wasn't asking. He was telling. Mom, we need to talk about the house. I set the mug down, still untouched. Good morning to you too, Donald. Don't start with me. Lisa and I have been talking. This isn't sustainable. That house is too big for you. The payments. There is no mortgage. The words came out flat, unbending, like a steel rod between us. Russell had paid it off 5 years ago. I'd never told them. I let them assume. I let them carry their little stories in their heads about my fragile finances, about me barely holding on. There was a pause. Then that laugh, Russell's laugh, except Russell had worn it with warmth. Donald had turned it into a blade. Mom, please. Dad's pension barely covers your medications. We all know the financial strain. I walked to the window, above the sink. The garden waited outside. The roses drooping, the herbs a tangle of weeds. Russell and I had spent 23 years bending over that soil together. Now it looked abandoned, like me. Tasks that used to bring joy had become monuments to loss. Your concern is touching, I said, staring at my reflection in the glass. Gray roots. Wrinkles deeper than they'd been just a month ago. My own face startling me, like a stranger had taken my place. Donald pushed on. Don't be dramatic. Darlene agrees with me. You should move in with one of us. I turned from the window. Darlene. My daughter, who hadn't called since the funeral. Who hadn't answered when I dialed her number. When exactly did Darlene share this opinion? Another pause. I could picture Donald dragging his hand through his thinning hair, just like his father used to. We had dinner last night, as a family, to discuss your options. Your options. Not Mom's future. Not how do we help her through this grief. Options. As if I were a problem to be solved. As if my life were a chess piece they were moving around the board. I see. I opened the refrigerator. Casseroles lined the shelves. Neighbors had delivered them in the first days after Russell's death, when everyone remembered me. I hadn't touched a single dish. And these options, I asked, include selling my home? It makes sense financially, Donald said quickly. You could help Lisa and me with our down payment. That colonial on Maple Street, we've been eyeing it for months. And Darlene could use help with Kathleen's tuition. It's a win-win. The refrigerator door slammed shut harder than I intended. A win-win. Mom, you know I didn't mean it like that. But he had. Donald had always meant exactly what he said. At least his selfishness was honest. Darlene's had always been quieter, her requests curved sideways, dressed up as guilt until I offered without her asking. What did you tell your sister about my finances? Just the truth. That Dad's pension isn't enough. That the house is too much. That you're struggling more than you admit. The truth. His version of it. As if he had ever asked about the details of Russell's affairs. As if he knew anything about the investments, the inheritance, the careful saving we'd done over the years. I thought of the folder I'd found in Russell's desk drawer. Bank statements, investment portfolios, and tucked neatly inside, the deed to a villa in Marbella. Russell had bought it as a surprise for our retirement. A place where we can drink wine and watch the sun sink into the sea without anyone asking us for anything, he had told me, just 6 months before his heart stopped. I'll think about it, I said finally. We're not asking you to think about it, Donald snapped. We're telling you. Lisa already found a buyer. Her cousin Gregory has a client who's very interested.
Cash.
Quick closing. Start packing your bags. My hand tightened around the phone. You found a buyer for my house. We're trying to help you, Mom. The sooner you accept this is best for everyone, the easier the transition will be. Transition. The word curdled in my ears. As if grief were a business deal. As if 30 years of love and marriage could be boxed up and sold with the stroke of a pen. And where exactly am I supposed to live in this transition? That's what we wanted to talk about. Darlene's got that finished basement. With Kathleen at college, there's plenty of room. You'd have your own entrance, your own bathroom. It could work perfectly. Darlene's basement. The one that flooded every spring. The one filled with plastic bins of holiday decorations and exercise equipment she never touched. The same basement where I had sat alone during Thanksgiving, listening to laughter upstairs, waiting for my turn at the table. How generous of her to offer. Darlene's excited about it, Donald had said, as if her enthusiasm sealed the deal. It could be good for both of you. You could help with Kathleen when she's home from school. Maybe cook a few meals. You know how Darlene struggles with meal planning. Of course. Darlene struggled with meal planning the same way she struggled with laundry, with cleaning, with remembering her own mother existed. But she had mastered the art of passing those struggles along. And who better to take them on than me? The woman who had once taught her to be strong, independent, capable. The irony nearly choked me. And you, Donald? My voice sharpened, steady despite the tremor in my chest. What part do you play in this arrangement? Lisa and I will handle the house sale, the paperwork, the negotiations. We'll make sure you get a fair price.
Fair.
I almost laughed. Donald's definition of fairness had always leaned heavily in his favor, like one of those carnival games where the ring never quite fit the bottleneck, no matter how many times you tried.
Rigged.
Designed to make the player lose. I need to think about this, I said again. There's nothing to think about, Mom. Gregory's client is serious. They want to close within the month. A month. 30 days to dismantle the life Russell and I had built with our hands and our hearts. 30 days to box up decades of birthdays, graduations, Christmas mornings. 30 days to erase the rooms where we had soothed chickenpox fevers, where we'd comforted broken teenage hearts, where laughter had once lived. I said I need to think about it. Silence. Then his clipped reply.
Fine.
But don't take too long. Good opportunities don't wait forever. The line went dead. I stayed frozen, holding the phone like it might burn me. The sudden silence was louder than any argument. Outside, a neighbor's dog barked, a car door slammed, the world carried on. Life didn't pause because mine had. I found myself drifting to Russell's study. His desk waited in the corner, scarred wood from the estate sale where we'd bargained for it when Donald was still in high school. 20 years of bills, plans, dreams had passed across that surface. I pulled out the folder, the one hidden under brittle tax returns, and spread its contents across the wood. Bank statements. Balances that would silence my children's condescension in a heartbeat. Investment portfolios, scarred by markets yet stronger than before. And then the deed.
Spain.
Whitewashed walls in photographs. A terrace overlooking the endless blue of the Mediterranean. I could almost hear Russell's voice again. A place where we can drink wine at sunset without anyone asking us for anything. He'd said it 6 months before his heart betrayed him. Russell had never bragged. Never flaunted. He'd kept our security quiet. Let them think we're struggling, he told me once, when Donald came sniffing for another loan. It builds character. At the time, I'd thought it cruel. Now I recognized it as foresight. My phone buzzed. A text from Darlene.
Mom, Donald told me about the house.
I know this is hard, but it's really for the best. Kathleen's so excited about having Grandma closer. Can't wait to discuss the details. Kathleen, my granddaughter. She had spent entire summers here, learning to roll cookie dough in this kitchen, pressing her hands into the earth of the garden. She used to call me every week from college, her voice small and lonely, asking for comfort only I could give. When had she last called? 2 months ago? 3? I scrolled through messages. The last one was a group text at Christmas, thanking everyone for gifts. No stories about her classes. No updates about her boyfriend. No whispered questions about life. Just silence. The realization hit with the weight of a stone. They had already moved forward. All of them. Russell's death was a hurdle to be cleared, not a wound to share. And I, their mother, their grandmother, was just another inconvenience to be dealt with. Another situation, requiring a tidy solution. I slid the papers back into the folder, placed it carefully in the drawer, and climbed the stairs. Russell's clothes still hung in the closet, holding the faint scent of his aftershave. I pulled down a suitcase from the shelf. My hands shook, but not from fear. It was time to pack, not the way Donald imagined. The law office smelled of leather and dust, a scent so close to Russell's study it made my throat tighten. I sat across from Connie West, the estate attorney Russell had trusted years ago. She was sharp, 50-something, streaks of silver in her hair, eyes that missed nothing. "Mrs. Lawson," she said, spreading the documents across her desk. "I have to admit, this is unusual. Your husband was very precise about contingencies, but I didn't expect we'd need them so soon." I smoothed the black dress I'd worn to the funeral, forcing my voice into calm. Russell always said I underestimated people's capacity for selfishness. I think he was right. Connie studied me with those clear, unblinking eyes. The revocable trust places everything under your control. The children were never named as beneficiaries of the real estate. Only the life insurance policy. The house, the investments, the villa, they belong to you alone. And the property in Spain? Your husband insisted it remain confidential, to be shared only with you, and only after 30 days had passed. He seemed to think your children might pressure you into hasty choices. Pressure. Such a polite word. Yesterday's phone call still echoed in my chest. Donald's voice, commanding, dismissive, turning me into a child unfit to decide for herself. The house sale they've arranged. I asked Connie, my voice lower than I expected. "Can it be stopped?" Her answer was calm, steady. "You're the sole owner, Michelle. Nothing moves forward without your signature. If they've made promises, they're promises built on sand. They have no power here." For the first time since Donald's phone call, something inside me loosened. A knot I hadn't realized I'd been carrying began to untangle. "And the property in Spain?" I pressed. "Fully paid. Legally yours. Russell's set up management. The home is maintained, cared for, ready the moment you decide to use it. Whenever you choose." The words echoed. When had anyone last spoken to me about choice? Not obligation. Not sacrifice.
Choice.
The very idea left me breathless. Connie slid another folder across the desk. "There's one more thing. Russell left this for you. He instructed me to deliver it exactly 1 month after his death. That's today." The envelope was cream, thick, my name inked in Russell's careful script. My hands shook as I broke the seal. The sterile air of the office disappeared. I could hear him. His voice filled the room. "My dearest Michelle, if you're reading this, then I'm gone. And I know you're left carrying the weight alone. I know our children. We love them, but I suspect they've already circled in, convinced they know what's best for you. They don't. You are not a burden. You are not a problem to solve. You are a capable, intelligent woman who raised 2 children, steadied me through every career change, kept our home, our life, intact for over 30 years. Don't let them diminish that. The money, the properties, they are yours. Do with them what you want.
Keep them.
Sell them. Give them away. But let it be your choice. You've spent decades putting us first. Now it's time to put yourself first.
Go to Spain.
Travel. Write the book you always dreamed of. Find your joy. The children will survive without your constant sacrifice. In fact, they may finally grow because of it. With all my love, all my faith in you, Russell. P.S. The key to Spain is in my desk drawer, behind the photo from Venice. Mrs. Rodriguez, next door, has cared for the garden. She speaks excellent English. I read it once. Then again. The words blurred, not from age, but from tears. Russell had known. He'd seen what I couldn't, or refused to. He had recognized the pattern. My love, repurposed by our children into something transactional. A resource. Not a gift. Are you all right? Connie's voice pulled me back. I folded the letter carefully, pressing it to my chest. Better than I've been in weeks. What do I need to do to transfer the house deed into my name only? I asked. It's already yours, she said. Russell removed the children 3 years ago. after Donald asked him to co-sign that restaurant deal. The restaurant. I remembered the argument, the anger in Donald's voice when Russell refused. At the time, I thought my husband was being stubborn, maybe even cruel. Now I saw it clearly. It was protection. Russell had seen further down the road than I had. There's something else, Connie said, sliding another envelope forward. A smaller one. Inside, a bank card. Russell called it your independence fund. He opened it last year. I turned the card over in my hand. How much? 50,000. He deposited into it monthly from his pension and dividends. He said it was for the day Michelle finally decides to live for herself.
$50,000.
Money I had never known existed. Money saved while I pinched grocery budgets and clipped coupons, believing we were tightening belts. It wasn't for security. It was for freedom. I left that office with more than papers in a briefcase. I left with a shift in my spine, in my heart. For the first time since Russell's death, clarity cut through the fog. The house was mine. The villa was mine. The investments were mine. And most importantly, the decision of what to do with them belonged only to me. As I reached my car, the phone rang. Darlene's name flashed. I answered. Mom. Perfect timing. I wanted to talk about the basement. Lisa knows a contractor who could add a kitchenette. Separate entrance. It'd be your own little apartment. I unlocked the car door, but didn't step inside. How thoughtful. I know you're worried about cost, but Donald and I figured it could come from the house sale proceeds. Think of it as an investment in your comfort. Comfort. Not independence. Not happiness. Comfort. Like an aging pet, shifted to a smaller cage with soft bedding, so no one felt guilty. Darlene, I asked quietly, when was the last time you called me just to ask how I was? A pause. What do you mean? I mean a phone call where you didn't want something, where you asked about my day, my feelings, my plans. When you called because you miss me. Mom, that's not fair. I've been buried with Kathleen's tuition. Work's been overwhelming. Tell me about Kathleen's expenses. Tuition's $28,000. Room and board, books, sorority fees. I leaned against the car, watching strangers move through the parking lot, carrying groceries, balancing lattes, living ordinary Thursday afternoons. Darlene, I've been sending Kathleen $500 a month since she started college. That's $12,000 over 2 years. Silence.
Heavy.
Money meant to help her. Money you never mentioned to Donald when you painted me as financially desperate. Mom, her voice cracked. That money helps. But it doesn't cover everything. Have you told Kathleen that I've been sending that money? The silence on the other end stretched long enough to tell me the answer before she spoke. She knows you help out. Help out. I pressed. Does she know how much? Does she know it comes from my pension, money Russell and I set aside for our old age, not from some college fund she imagined her grandfather left behind? I don't see why those details matter. I closed my eyes. Something cold spread in my chest, heavy and metallic, like swallowing ice. She doesn't know, does she? She believes her tuition is carried by your sacrifice, your hard work. She has no idea her grandmother has been quietly wiring money every month. Mom, Darlene sighed, exasperated. You're making this more complicated than it has to be. Am I? My voice came out sharper than I intended, but I didn't pull it back. Or am I finally seeing how simple it really is? I hung up. My hands were shaking, not from grief this time, but from anger.
Pure. Clean.
Anger that stripped away the fog, that felt like finally waking up after years of restless sleep. At home, I went straight to Russell's desk. The key was right where he'd said. Small, brass, a tiny Spanish flag dangling from the ring. Behind it, a photograph I'd forgotten existed. Venice, our 25th anniversary. We were laughing at something the photographer said. My hair caught the afternoon light. Russell's hand rested on mine. I looked younger in that picture. Not because of smoother skin or darker hair. Younger because I was happy, unguarded, open, alive. I couldn't remember the last time I'd seen that version of myself. My phone buzzed. A text from Donald. Mom, Gregory needs an answer by tomorrow. His client's getting impatient. Don't mess this up for all of us. For all of us. I deleted it without replying. Then I opened my laptop. It took 20 minutes to find the property management company's website, 10 more to draft the email. Dear Mrs. Rodriguez, my name is Michelle Lawson. I am Russell's widow. I believe you have been caring for our home on Cala de las Flores. I plan to visit Spain very soon, and I'd like to stay in the house for an extended period. Please let me know what preparations are needed. Thank you for your kindness in maintaining the property during this difficult time. Sincerely, Michelle Lawson. I hit send before I could talk myself out of it. Then I pulled out the suitcase I'd taken down yesterday. This time I didn't pack clothes first. I opened Donald's old closet and began filling boxes. Trophies, school papers, the baseball glove Russell had bought him for his 10th birthday. Each item wrapped and labeled carefully, preserved pieces of a childhood I had carried longer than necessary. I moved on to Darlene's room, halfway through her old belongings, when the phone rang again. An international number. I answered. This is Pilar Rodriguez. I just received your email. I am so sorry for your loss. Russell spoke of you often. Her English carried an accent, but her tone was warm, kind. It caught me off guard, tightening my chest with unexpected emotion. Thank you, Mrs. Rodriguez. I hope it's not too much trouble, but I'm thinking of coming soon. Very soon. Oh, no trouble at all, she said brightly. The house is ready. I check every week. The garden is beautiful. Russell would be happy to know you are coming. When were you thinking to arrive? I looked around the bedroom. Boxes stacked neatly against the wall. Memories taped shut, ready to be shipped to children who saw me not as a mother, but as an obstacle. Next week, I said. I'd like to come next week. The moving truck arrived at 7 sharp the following morning. Just as Donald's car pulled into the driveway. From my bedroom window, I watched him climb out, irritation already etched into his face. He wore the serious business suit, yellow tie, the one Lisa had picked for his interviews. In his hand, a thick manila folder, probably filled with contracts and signatures he planned to shove under my nose. Perfect timing. The movers were efficient, professional. They loaded the boxes I had prepared from Donald and Darlene's old rooms, along with furniture they had once claimed to want, but never reclaimed. Russell's worn leather armchair. The antique dining set my mother had given us. The piano Darlene begged for, abandoned after 6 months of lessons. Ma'am, the lead mover asked politely. His name tag read Rodriguez. A coincidence, so sharp I almost smiled. Where do you want these delivered? The first set goes to 247 Maple Street, I said, handing him Donald's address in my handwriting. The second to 892 Pine Avenue. Ring the doorbell and tell them these are gifts from Michelle Lawson. Memories worth keeping safe. Rodriguez nodded. A professional. But I caught the flicker of a smile tugging at his mouth. 20 years in the business must have shown him enough family dramas to recognize this one unfolding. Donald's knock rattled the door.
Hard.
I smoothed the red dress I'd chosen that morning, the one Russell always said lit up my eyes. My hair was styled, my shoulders squared. I opened the door, looking nothing like the grieving widow my son expected to push around. Mom, what the hell is going on? His voice was sharp, his eyes darting past me to the movers in the hallway. Why is there a truck in your driveway? Good morning, Donald, I said evenly. I'm having some things moved. He brushed past me, scanning the boxes stacked neatly, each one labeled with his name. His face went red, creeping up his neck. These are my things. My childhood things. Why are you packing them? I thought you'd want them, I replied, my tone calm, almost gentle. Memories are precious, don't you think? That look. The same one Donald had as a teenager, when I'd caught him in a lie. His jaw stiff, his eyes darting everywhere but at me. Mom, we need to talk, he said finally. His voice clipped, businesslike. Gregory's client is ready to make an offer. We need your signature today. I closed the door behind me, leaning against it, steadying myself. He was pacing the entryway like a caged animal, back and forth, his frustration practically steaming off him. Donald, sit down. I don't want to sit down. I want to know why you're acting so strange. First you ignore my calls for 3 days. Now, there's a moving truck outside. What the hell is going on?
Sit down.
Something in my voice, sharp, unyielding, cut through his defiance. He froze, then lowered himself onto the bottom step of the staircase, the manila folder clutched tight to his chest like a shield. I crossed my arms. Tell me something. When Gregory's client asked about this house, what exactly did you tell them about where the money was going? He blinked. What do you mean? I mean, did you tell them the proceeds would be split between you and Darlene? Did you already calculate how much you'd pocket after paying off this so-called mortgage you're so worried about? Donald's jaw tightened, a flash of irritation. Mom, you're not thinking clearly. Grief clouds judgment. I let out a laugh, low and bitter. My judgment is clearer now than it has been in years. I walked to Russell's leather chair, the one the movers would soon carry out. I rested my hand on its worn arm. Let me ask you something else. When you and Darlene had dinner together to discuss my situation, did either of you ask how I was doing? Did you wonder if I was sleeping, if I was eating, if I needed someone to talk to, or just sit with me in the silence? His lips pressed together, his knuckles whitening around the folder. Did you ask me what I wanted to do with my life now that I'm alone for the first time in 30 years? His silence was answer enough. Or, I said slowly, did you spend the entire evening calculating how much money you could squeeze from your father's death? That's not fair, he snapped. Isn't it? I pulled out my phone, opened the calculator app, and tapped quickly. Let's do the math. If you sell my house for the number Gregory quoted, $350,000, split between you and Darlene, after whatever imaginary costs you've dreamed up, you'd each walk away with what? Around $160,000? Am I close? The color drained from his face. That's what I thought. I slipped the phone back into my pocket. Donald, do you know what your father's pension pays me each month? He tried to look dismissive. I don't see why that matters. $4,200 every month. Plus Social Security. Plus dividends from investments you and your sister don't even know exist. I let the numbers hang in the air, heavy. Now tell me again how I can't afford to keep this house. Donald shot up from the step, the folder slipping from his hands and smacking the floor. You lied to us. I shook my head slowly.
No.
I didn't. You assumed. And I didn't correct your assumptions. There's a difference. You let us think you were struggling. You wanted to think I was struggling, I said, my voice firm. That way you could justify treating me like a burden to be managed instead of a human being to be cared for. Outside, the rumble of the moving truck's engine echoed through the window. I saw the movers lifting Russell's chair into the back, securing it carefully. Donald's voice cracked as he spoke again. Mom, if you don't need the money, then why? He stopped mid-sentence. Realization flickered across his face, sharp and sudden. His businessman's brain catching up. You're punishing us. I met his eyes.
Come.
Steady. I'm giving you exactly what you asked for. That's not what we asked for. Isn't it? I stepped closer. You asked me to move out of my house. I'm moving. You wanted my belongings distributed so they wouldn't weigh me down. I'm distributing them. I bent down and picked up the folder he dropped, flipping it open just enough to see Gregory's letterhead. You wanted to handle my affairs for me. But, Donald, these aren't your affairs to handle. He lunged for the folder, but I held it back, out of his reach. Mom, be reasonable. We can work this out. Maybe you don't have to move in with Darlene. We could find you a nice apartment. Something more manageable. I let the word linger. More manageable for whom? It landed between us like a blade. Donald's mouth opened, closed, searching for words that wouldn't condemn him further.
My phone rang.
Darlene's name flashed on the screen. Answer it, I said. Put her on speaker. He shook his head, but I pressed anyway. Mom, what is this insanity? Darlene's voice shot through the room, sharp as glass. There's a moving truck in my house. 2 men are trying to deliver a piano I don't have room for. Hello, Darlene, I said evenly. The piano you begged for when you were 8. I thought you'd want it back. I don't want it back. I don't have space for a piano. Her voice trembled with anger. And Donald called me about this insane idea, you're not selling the house. What is going on? The house isn't being sold. Dead silence. Then her voice, edged with disbelief. What do you mean it isn't being sold? I mean exactly what I said. This is my house. Russell left it to me. I'm not selling it. But Donald said you couldn't afford. Donald was wrong about many things. Silence again. Longer this time. When she spoke, her tone was sharp, cold, the same defiant edge I remembered from her teenage years. Mom, I don't know what game you're playing, but people are counting on this sale. I've already told Kathleen she'd have a bedroom here when you moved in.
Kathleen.
I turned slowly toward Donald. His face had gone pale. Tell me about Kathleen, Darlene. What about her? She shot back. When was the last time she called me? I don't keep track of Kathleen's phone calls. I do, I said. The last time was December 15th.
Christmas break.
She wanted to know if I'd send her money for a spring trip.
Not how I was doing.
Not whether I missed her. Not a single word about her grandfather. Just money. Mom, she's a college student, Darlene said quickly. They're self-absorbed at that age. Is she? Or has she simply learned, from watching her mother, that grandmothers exist to provide financial support without expecting love in return? That's not true. You're twisting everything.
Am I?
I pressed. Then answer me this. How much money have I sent Kathleen in the past 2 years? The silence on the line was sharp. $12,000, I said. $500 a month. Directly to her account. Money you never told Donald about, I said quietly. Money Kathleen seems to think comes from you, not me. Donald's head snapped toward me. His mouth hung open, disbelief painted across his face. You've been sending Kathleen money? Every month since she started college. My voice was calm, almost too calm. Because I love my granddaughter. Because I want her to succeed. I turned from the window and faced them both. Donald, stiff and fuming in my entryway, and Darlene, her voice floating through the phone like smoke. But love, I said, isn't meant to be invisible. Support isn't supposed to live in the shadows. When did my family decide my contributions only mattered when they were hidden? For the first time, Darlene's voice softened, smaller, fragile. Mom, we never meant. Yes, you did. My reply was sharp as glass. You meant exactly this. You wanted my resources without my presence. My money without my opinions. My compliance without my autonomy. I ended the call with one tap. The silence was deafening. I looked at Donald. The moving truck will be at your house in 30 minutes. I suggest you make space. Your childhood is on its way home. Mom, please, he whispered. His bravado cracked, falling apart in front of me. We can fix this.
How?
The word landed like a hammer. He froze, caught between guilt and calculation. I could see him searching for that one magic phrase, the key that would restore his access to my resources without costing him respect. We could have dinner. As a family, talk about what you really want. What I really want. The laugh that broke out of me startled us both. It was bitter, unrestrained. Donald, what I really want is to live the rest of my life surrounded by people who see me as more than an emergency ATM. What I want is to wake up without wondering which of my children will call, not to ask about me, but to ask for more. What I want is to be missed for my company, not mourned for my money. The moving truck's engine roared outside. Time was up. Donald straightened suddenly, his tie askew, the contracts scattered at his feet. Where are you going to go? I smiled then. The first real smile that had touched my face in months. Somewhere warm. He bent to gather the papers, hands trembling, movements frantic. Mom, you can't just disappear. We're your family. I tilted my head. Are you? For a fleeting moment, as he looked up at me from the floor, I saw him. Not the man clutching contracts, but the little boy who used to curl into my lap after nightmares. The child who needed my comfort, my bandages, my stories to keep the dark away. Then the moment vanished. He was a man again.
Hard.
Calculating. Afraid of losing control. When will you be back? He asked. I opened the front door. Sunlight poured in, flooding the entryway, warm and unrelenting. Outside, the moving truck pulled away, carrying Russell's chair, carrying my past. I'll let you know. The flight to Madrid stretched 13 hours. 13 hours of crystalline clarity. I sat in the window seat Russell had always preferred. The Atlantic spread out beneath me, endless and shimmering, like a vast promise. The woman beside me, a cheerful retiree from Phoenix, tried to draw me into casual chatter during takeoff. But something in my expression must have stopped her. I wasn't ready for pleasantries. Not yet. I needed silence. And for the first time in years, I had it.
My phone stayed dark in my bag.
No vibrations. No missed calls. No obligations disguised as affection. For 3 days after Donald left, they had called without pause. Donald, frantic. Darlene, shrill. Even Lisa, who hadn't dialed my number once in the 5 years she'd been married to my son. The messages shifted in tone, like weather. First apologetic. Then frantic. Then bitter. Mom, I think we had a misunderstanding. Michelle, it's Lisa. Donald is really upset. If we could just talk. Mom, Kathleen is asking questions about the money. What do I tell her? And then, finally, Darlene's voice.
Cold.
Sharp.
Fine, Mom.
You want to play games? Two can play. Don't expect us to come running when you realize how lonely you are. That was supposed to wound me. To slice me open. To remind me of their power. But instead, it liberated me. I switched off my phone that night. I never turned it back on. At customs in Madrid, a young officer stamped my passport with quiet efficiency. Purpose of visit? She asked, her eyes kind. Starting over, I replied. Her smile was gentle, unguarded, the first genuine smile I'd received from anyone under 40 in months. Welcome to Spain, Señora. And there she was.
Pilar Rodriguez.
Waiting for me in the arrivals hall, exactly as she had promised. A woman in her early 60s. Silver hair drawn back in a bun, eyes that crinkled when she smiled. She held a small sign with my name written carefully, as if she'd practiced. Mrs. Lawson, she said warmly. Welcome. Welcome. She embraced me like an old friend, and to my own surprise, I clung to her with unexpected intensity. How was your flight? Are you tired? Hungry? The house is ready for you. I made some food. Just basics. Until you shop for yourself. Her English carried a lilting music, her words careful but warm. As we walked to her small Renault, she chatted about weather, about the neighborhood, about the garden she had been tending in my absence. Russell, she said softly as we drove through the narrow streets of Marbella. He was so proud of this house. He showed me pictures. You in the kitchen back in America. Your grandchildren. Always your grandchildren. He would say, my Michelle will love the kitchen here. She will make it sing with life. I pressed my lips together, fighting the ache in my chest. Russell had spoken of me here, in this place I had never seen. To a woman I had never met. He had built a vision of a future for us, a future stolen by death, yet resurrected in Pilar's words. When the house came into view, it took my breath away. The house was smaller than the one I'd left behind in America. But it was perfect, balanced, whole. Whitewashed walls gleamed in the afternoon sun. Blue shutters caught the light like fragments of sky. Bougainvillea spilled in wild cascades over the garden walls, bursts of purple, pink, red. Lemon trees bent under the weight of fruit, their branches framing a narrow stone path that led to the front door. It's beautiful, I whispered, my throat tightening. Russell, Pilar said softly, pressing a brass key into my hand, the one I'd found tucked in his desk.
He chose well. Come.
Let me show you. Inside, the air was cool, touched with a faint scent of citrus and salt drifting in from the sea. The terracotta floors glowed with warmth. Windows opened to a terrace where the Mediterranean spread out like a living painting. The rooms were simple, but they breathed elegance. A cream-colored couch, a wooden dining table, solid and waiting for laughter. Built-in shelves, empty for now, hungry for books and memories. In the kitchen, copper pots gleamed above tiled counters, blue and white patterns reflecting the ocean beyond. I stocked the refrigerator, Pilar said, pulling open a cabinet. Plates, glasses, olive oil, a bottle of red wine. There is bread,
cheese,
fruit. Tonight you rest. Tomorrow we explore together. Yes. Her kindness pressed against me like a weight I wasn't ready for. This woman owed me nothing, yet she had cared for Russell's dream as if it were her own. Pilar, I don't know how to thank you. She touched my arm, her smile steady. No thanks necessary. We are neighbors now. In Spain, neighbors are family. She pointed through the window to a house nearby, painted the same white with the same shutters. I live just there. If you need anything at all, you call me. Russell made me promise to take care of you. When she left, the silence felt different. Not empty.
full.
I stood in the kitchen, my Spanish kitchen, and for the first time in months, I felt peace. I unpacked slowly, deliberately. Clothes in the bedroom closet. Russell's photograph placed gently on the bedside table. My toiletries lined up in the bright bathroom, with its clawfoot tub and window opening toward the endless sea. Every action was purposeful, sacred. So different from the hurried bitterness of packing boxes for Donald and Darlene. By sunset, I poured a glass of the wine Pilar had left, stepped onto the terrace, and let the horizon take me. The sky melted into gold, coral, deep violet. The Mediterranean breathed below, steady waves against rock, keeping time with my pulse. Sailboats dotted the water like scattered prayers. Then my phone. Forgotten in my purse. Vibrating. Ringing. For 4 days, I had resisted. I had escaped their voices, their demands. But the caller ID stopped me cold. Kathleen. My granddaughter. I let it ring once.
Twice.
3 times. On the 4th, I answered. Grandma? Oh my God, finally. I've been trying to reach you for days. Her voice was different. Not entitled. Not careless. Sharper. Wounded. Hello, Kathleen. Where are you? Her words rushed out. Frantic. Mom won't tell me anything. She just said you had some big fight with her and Uncle Donald, and now you're gone, and there's all this weird drama about a house sale that didn't happen. Kathleen slowed down. I can't slow down.
I'm furious.
Do you know what I found out? Do you know what Mom told me yesterday? I sank into a terrace chair, watching the last streaks of light fade across the horizon. What did she tell you? She told me you've been sending me money. $500. Every month. For 2 years. She made it sound like this huge. But Grandma, Kathleen's voice cracked. Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't I know? The ache in her voice cut straight through me. Your mother thought it was better, I whispered. Better? For who? For her, so she could take credit for my tuition. For Uncle Donald, so he could paint you as weak, as desperate. So he could justify trying to force you out of your home. Her breath caught, jagged, breaking into sobs. Raw, unguarded. Grandma, I am so ashamed. So ashamed. Kathleen, I said firmly, my own eyes stinging, you have nothing to be ashamed of. Yes, I do. I let them convince me you were fragile, that you needed managing, that I should keep my distance so you wouldn't get too attached. Mom told me you were fragile, Grandma. Fragile. The word stung more than I expected. I gave you space, Kathleen went on, anger tightening her voice now. But while I was giving you space, you were paying my sorority dues. My textbooks. Probably my spring break trips. And I never even thanked you. I never even asked how you were surviving without Grandpa. Her sobs rose, carried across the ocean, carried into my bones. And now they're telling people you've had some kind of breakdown. That you disappeared. But that's not true, is it? You haven't had a breakdown. You've just finally had enough of their shit. Her sudden profanity startled me. And then I smiled. A small, broken, Honest smile. Language, Kathleen.
Saw thee.
But am I right? I looked out at the sea, at the village below flickering to life with evening lights.
Yes.
You're right. A pause. Then, where are you? Spain. Spain? Her voice shifted again, disbelief replacing fury. Like the country Spain? Your grandfather bought a house here, I said, my gaze locked on the horizon. For our retirement. I'm sitting on the terrace now, watching the Mediterranean. The line fell quiet. A long, fragile silence. Then she whispered, Is it beautiful? I swallowed hard. It's the most beautiful place I've ever seen. Her next words trembled. Grandma, I need to tell you something. I need to apologize. You don't need to apologize, sweetheart, I said softly. You were told lies by people you trusted. That's not your fault. But I should have known better. I should have called. I should have asked. Kathleen, listen to me. I rose from the chair, restless, pacing the terrace as the first stars pierced the darkening sky. The sea below murmured against the rocks, steady, eternal. You're 20 years old, I said, my voice firm but gentle. Your job right now is to study.
To grow.
To discover who you want to become. It's not your job to unravel family lies or carry the weight of our mistakes. But I want to do better, Kathleen said. Her voice shook, fragile yet determined. I want to be better. Then be better, I told her. I stopped pacing and looked out toward the horizon, where the last embers of light bled into night. Call me because you miss me, not because you need something. Visit me because you want to be here, not because it feels like duty. Love me because I'm your grandmother, not because I pay your bills. The silence that followed was thick, charged. Then her voice, tentative, hopeful. Can I visit you? In Spain. The question startled me. Spain? I hesitated. Kathleen, I don't know how long I'll even be here. I don't care. I've got spring break in 3 weeks. I'll cancel Cancun. Cancel the stupid trip Mom probably let you pay for anyway. I'll come to you. I want to see this house Grandpa dreamed of. I want to sit on that terrace beside you. I want to know your new life. That phrase, your new life, sent something warm, alive, rushing through my chest. What would your mother say? I asked cautiously. I don't care what Mom says.
A pause.
Then, quieter. That's not true. I do care. But I won't let her words decide my choices anymore. Her tone shifted. Stronger now, steadier, like steel being forged in fire. Grandma, I'm 20 years old, and I just realized I don't even know you. Not really. I know the version they showed me. The grandmother who bakes cookies, sends cards, smiles politely. Someone fragile, careful, safe. But that's not you, is it? I thought of the woman who'd stood her ground in that hallway, who refused to bow to Donald's threats, who bought a ticket to Spain with no plan to return. No, I said at last, my voice low but certain. That's not me at all. Good, Kathleen replied fiercely. I can't wait to meet the real you. When we hung up, I sat in the darkness, listening to the waves carrying secrets into the night. Something stirred in me, something I hadn't felt in years. I wasn't just surviving. For the first time in months, I was looking forward to tomorrow. For the first time in years, I wasn't alone. 3 weeks later, at Malaga Airport, I barely recognized the young woman walking toward me. This wasn't the polished college girl from Christmas photos. Perfect hair, flawless makeup, clothes chosen for Instagram approval. This Kathleen wore faded jeans, a plain white t-shirt, her dark hair pulled into a messy bun, sunglasses pushed carelessly on her head. Her smile was real, unguarded, radiant. Grandma, she cried, dropping her backpack and running straight into my arms. Her embrace nearly knocked the breath from me. It wasn't the obligatory hug from family dinners. This was desperate, grateful,
Alive.
Let me look at you, I whispered, holding her back at arm's length. She was thinner, but there was strength in her presence that hadn't been there before. You look amazing, she said, eyes scanning my face. Actually amazing.
You're tan.
Your hair. Did you cut it? I touched the shorter layers Pilar had convinced me to try. Just a trim. It's perfect, Kathleen said. Her voice softened. You look like yourself. On the drive to Marbella, she pressed her face against the window like a child, marveling at olive groves, whitewashed villages, twisting roads through the hills. Her joy was contagious. I remembered Russell's eyes, how they'd filled with wonder the first time he saw the world outside America. When we arrived, I pulled the car into the narrow driveway. This is it, I said quietly. Your grandfather's dream. Kathleen stood in the garden, surrounded by lemon trees and bougainvilleas spilling like fireworks across the walls. She turned slowly, her eyes wide. The terrace. The sea beyond. The house that had become my refuge. He knew, she whispered, tears glistening. He knew you would need this place. I think he did, I said softly. That evening, Pilar brought paella, fussing over Kathleen as if she'd been waiting for her all along. My granddaughter's laughter came easily, naturally, unchained from the stiffness she wore around her parents. As the sun set, painting the sea in violet and gold, Kathleen settled into the chair beside me. Tell me everything, she said. Tell me about your life here. So I told her. I spoke of morning walks through the village, shopkeepers greeting me by name. Spanish lessons with Miguel, the retired professor who teased me for my accent but encouraged my progress. And the book I'd begun. Not Russell's dream novel, but a memoir. My story. About marriage. About motherhood. About how love can twist into service and service into obligation. You're writing a book? Kathleen gasped. Her eyes shone. Grandma, that's incredible. I had no idea you wanted to write. I didn't know either, I admitted. Not until I had the silence, the space to hear myself again. Kathleen was quiet, thoughtful. Then she said, Mom called me yesterday. I stiffened. She tried to stop me from coming. Kathleen continued, lifting a hand to calm me. She said you were having a breakdown. That seeing me would make it worse. She told me I was selfish for choosing you over spring break with the family. My chest tightened. And what did you tell her? I told her maybe it was time someone in this family was selfish for your sake. Her words struck me like lightning. There was steel in her voice now. A strength I had never heard before, that I looked Kathleen straight in the eye. If I were really falling apart, why hasn't anyone come? Why haven't they called me directly, asked me themselves, checked if I was breathing? Why do they only whisper about me, like I'm a problem to be handled instead of a person to be loved? Her silence stretched across the line, heavy. Then Kathleen exhaled. Because if she answered that, Grandma, she'd have to admit the truth. They don't care about how you're doing. They care about what you're worth to them, about what they can take. The bluntness should have stung, but instead, it steadied me. It felt like proof, vindication. Listen to me carefully, I said, my voice soft but deliberate. I don't want you tangled in our mess. I don't expect you to choose sides. Donald and Darlene, they're your family too. Kathleen leaned forward, her tone sharp, unyielding.
No.
They chose sides long ago. They chose when they used me as a weapon against you. When they let me believe you were weak and poor while they lived off your sacrifices. When they worked to isolate you from anyone who might actually care. That was their choice. Not mine. Her eyes burned, alive with conviction. I've been turning this over in my mind for weeks, Grandma. And I finally see it clearly. They didn't just lie to you about money. They lied to me about you. I swallowed hard. What do you mean? They made you out to be fragile. Like you couldn't handle too much emotion. Like if I called too often, I'd be smothering you. They told me to keep my distance. To let you grieve quietly. But that was never about protecting you, was it? It was about controlling me. Controlling the story. Her fists clenched on the table. I studied her face, astonished by her clarity. Kathleen, they wanted me desperate, so I'd bend to their terms. And they wanted you distant, so you'd never see what they were doing. Her voice cracked with anger. Do you know what the worst part is? It almost worked. I almost became the kind of granddaughter who could ignore your loneliness, who could believe it was easier to stay away. But you didn't, I whispered. No, she said, shaking her head. Because you forced the truth into the light. You left. You made them show me who they really are. If you hadn't, I might have gone my whole life never knowing you at all. We sat together under the Spanish sky, silence folding around us as stars began to scatter above the sea. Then Kathleen turned to me. Can I stay longer than a week? Her words caught me off guard. What about school? I already spoke to my professors. They'll let me do independent study, essays, exams online.
I don't want to go back yet.
I want time with you, not holiday visits, not calls where every word has an agenda. Real time, time that matters. Her eyes, Russell's eyes, looked straight through me.
Steady. Certain.
I'm 20 years old, and I just realized I've never had a real conversation with you. All my life, you've been the woman who sends birthday cards and cookies. The dependable one. But I don't know what makes you laugh. I don't know what you dreamed about before you became our grandmother. And I want to know. I want to know everything. The next morning, she slipped into my rhythm as if she'd been here for years. She walked with me through the cobblestone streets of the village, fumbling through Spanish with the baker, who grinned at her effort. She crouched in Pilar's garden, dirt under her nails, laughing when a stubborn weed fought back. At lunch, Miguel told stories of his days teaching literature in Madrid, and Kathleen leaned in, drinking in every word. Your grandmother has the soul of a writer, Miguel said warmly. She notices what others overlook. She sees meaning in the smallest of moments. Kathleen turned to me, her face softening with recognition. She's always been like that. I just never noticed before. That afternoon, I took her to the hidden cove I discovered, a beach only reachable by a narrow path through the pines. Kathleen laid a blanket on the sand while I unpacked the picnic basket. Grandma, she said suddenly, her tone serious. Can I ask you something personal? I looked up from the sandwiches. Always. Are you ever going back? The question I'd buried even for myself. I don't know, I admitted slowly. But you could. Legally?
Yes.
Russell made sure of it. He researched every detail. Residency. Healthcare. I have everything I need to stay.
Then stay.
Her answer was instant, clear.
I blink så her.
You think I should? I know you should, she said. Let Mom and Uncle Donald clean up their own messes. Stop carrying their weight. Stop letting them dictate the story. She bit into her sandwich, thoughtful, then added. And I think I should transfer here. Finish school in Spain. Maybe Madrid. Maybe Barcelona. Or maybe take a gap year. Work with Pilar in her pottery studio. Help you with your book. Figure out who I am when I'm not living for someone else's approval. Kathleen, that's huge. So was cutting your hair, she shot back. So was refusing to sell your house. So was buying a one-way ticket to Spain. She turned to me, her voice steady. My whole life, I've been choosing what other people expected, mom, professors, friends. But here, with you for the first time, I see clearly. And do you know what I see? What? I whispered. That you're not fragile. You're the strongest person I've ever met. And I don't want to be the kind of woman who abandons someone she loves just because it's easier. I want to show up. I want to choose love over comfort. Truth over convenience. I shook my head. Kathleen, your mother will never forgive me if I let you derail your life. This isn't derailing my life, she said fiercely. This is saving it. Her hands closed around mine, firm, warm, certain. Grandma, I was sleepwalking through college, just doing what was expected. But I'm awake now. And I want to spend that awakeness with someone who sees me, not as a project, not as a responsibility, but as myself. That evening, we called her university, arranged a temporary leave. Then we phoned Pilar about an apprenticeship. Finally, with the sun bleeding into the horizon and waves whispering below the terrace, Kathleen made one last call. Mom, she said, her voice calm, steady. I'm extending my stay in Spain. No, I'm not breaking down. I'm breaking through. You can be angry if you want, but I'm 20 years old. This is my choice. And I'm choosing Grandma. Because she's the only one who has ever treated me like I mattered more than what I could provide. When the call ended, she powered down her phone, placed it face down on the table, and smiled at me with Russell's smile. Quiet. Determined.
Free.
Any regrets? I asked. Just one, she said softly. That it took me 20 years to realize where I belong. That night, under the wide Spanish sky, we sat side by side on the terrace. Stars shimmered over the Mediterranean. And I felt it, my story shifting. What began in grief had become something else. I had lost the illusion of family that demanded my silence. But I had found the truth of family that celebrated my strength. For the first time since Russell's death, I wasn't just surviving. For the first time since Russell's death, I was thriving. Her parents despised me before they even knew my name. That's the truth. By the time I set foot anywhere near their mansion, I was already the villain in their story. On the drive out there, fate decided to test me. A broken-down Rolls-Royce on the side of a lonely country road. An old woman standing helpless beside it. I should have kept going. I should have focused on the dinner I was already dreading. But that's not who I am. I pulled over, knowing full well what it would cost me. Knowing grease and sweat would betray me before I ever shook their hands. I arrived late, filthy, exhausted, ready for the look of disgust I'd been warned about. What I didn't expect was for that very same woman I'd stopped to help to arrive right behind me. But let me back up, because before I ended up covered in engine oil on that roadside, there was a phone call. A call that made everything heavier. It was Sophia, my girlfriend, my lifeline, the only reason I was putting myself through the circus at all. I was standing in my cramped one-bedroom apartment, clutching my phone, sweating through my only decent suit. "Mark," she whispered, "remember the plan. If my father asks what you do, you don't say mechanic. You say specialized automotive management. If my mother notices your hands, you tell her you've been woodworking. No oil. No transmission fluid. None of it. Promise me." I tried to laugh it off, tried to cut through the panic in her voice. "Soph, I fix cars. That's who I am. I built my shop from nothing. That's my pride." "I know," she said, and I could hear her fighting back guilt. "And I love that about you. But they won't see it. They won't understand. Please, Mark. Just for tonight. Just for me." I hated myself in that moment because I caved. I always caved for her. And so I agreed to be a man I wasn't. For a night. For her parents, Richard and Eleanor Prescott. Names that carried weight in circles I didn't belong to. I'd heard the stories. Their country club exclusivity. Their silent disdain for anyone outside their bubble of old money. People like me didn't exist in their world unless we were polishing their cars or serving them wine. Still, I scrubbed my hands raw with a stiff brush until my knuckles burned. No amount of soap could erase years of grease. I stared at my reflection, tie straight, suit pressed, eyes tired but stubborn. Then I climbed into my truck. That truck was my pride. A vintage pickup I'd restored with my own 2 hands. Clean, gleaming, every bolt a testament to work that never lied. I drove out of the city, leaving behind cracked sidewalks and traffic lights, moving deeper into their world. Brick faded into stone. Gas stations gave way to horse fences. And soon, I was surrounded by estates, massive fortresses hidden behind iron gates and perfectly trimmed hedges. I checked my watch. For once in my life, I was early, and that's when I saw it. A Rolls-Royce Silver Cloud, 2-tone, majestic, stranded on the shoulder. Hood open, engine smoking like a wounded beast. Beside it stood an older woman, pearls at her neck, tweed jacket neatly pressed, silver hair sculpted with care.
She didn't look panicked.
She looked annoyed, the way only the wealthy can look annoyed, like the universe had inconvenienced her personally. Sophia's voice echoed in my head. "Don't stop. Don't be late. Not tonight." But then the mechanic in me, the The man I couldn't bury under soap or suits spoke louder. That car was a masterpiece. And it was dying.
I pulled over.
Killed the engine. Left my jacket behind. Stepped out in my shirt and tie. Trouble, ma'am? I asked carefully. Her eyes studied me. Intelligent, guarded. It just stopped, she said crisply. Dreadful clunk, then smoke. My driver should have been here, but he's lost, apparently. Mind if I take a look? I know these engines. She tilted her head, weighing me, then gave a single nod. I leaned into the hood, and there it was. The scent of oil, the metallic hum of history. My comfort zone. My language. Within 30 seconds, I spotted it, a frayed wire on the distributor cap. Classic issue. Quick fix. It's a loose connection, I told her. Give me 20 minutes. She'll be running smooth again. I hesitated, glanced at my shirt. But it'll get messy. Her lips curled into the faintest smile. Young man, if you can bring her back to life, I don't care if you drown yourself in grease. That was all the permission I needed. I grabbed my toolkit from the truck, rolled up my sleeves, and went to work. My hands found their rhythm. Strip, reconnect, tape.
Clean, precise.
She asked questions, not about me, but about the car. She understood enough to appreciate my answers, and for once, my knowledge wasn't something to be hidden. When I finished, I wiped my hands on an old rag, looked at her and nodded. All set, ma'am. Give her a try. The engine roared back to life, like a sleeping beast jolted awake. That deep, rolling thunder of a machine that was built to outlive generations. She turned the key, and the silver cloud purred, strong and steady. The woman's entire face transformed. Her smile was radiant, full of life and gratitude. Young man, you're a miracle worker, she declared, her voice warm now, stripped of the aristocratic frost I had first heard. I shook my head. Just knowing she's running again. That's enough for me. For a heartbeat, she held my gaze. Sharp eyes, intelligent eyes, but softened now with something close to respect. Then, with a graceful nod, she slipped behind the wheel. I watched her glide away down that country road, the Rolls-Royce gleaming in the fading light like a resurrected queen reclaiming her throne. I stood there, chest full, hands filthy, the satisfaction of a job well done warming me from the inside. But then, reality struck. My eyes dropped to my watch. Over an hour late. My hands were streaked black with grease. My suit pants ruined. And ahead of me, the dinner I had been dreading all along. The sun was sinking fast, spilling orange fire across the hills. 6 o'clock had come and gone. My stomach clenched. I started rehearsing excuses, none of them sounding anything but pathetic. An elderly woman, a broken-down classic car, an emergency. To me, it was truth. To them, it would sound like the flimsiest lie a desperate boy might make up. Sophia had been clear. Her parents valued one thing above all else, appearances. And right now, I looked like the ghost of every nightmare they'd ever had about their daughter dating beneath her. The entrance appeared at last, 2 towering stone pillars, no gate. Not security, but arrogance. A statement that said, "We have nothing to fear. This land is untouchable." The driveway wound on forever, crisp white gravel crunching beneath my tires. Every inch of the grounds manicured to perfection, every hedge, every blade of grass, screaming control and wealth. And then the house came into view. Calling it a house was an insult. It was a palace. A Georgian manor, 3 stories of brick and glass, glowing like a floating city with its hundreds of lit windows. I eased my old pickup into the circle drive. Parked at the edge, like a beaten-down fisherman's boat among sleek million-dollar yachts. Mercedes, BMWs, Bentleys. I killed the engine, but I didn't move. Just sat there gripping the steering wheel, heart hammering like it wanted out of my chest. I reached for the glove box, pulled out a paper napkin, scrubbed at the grease under my nails until my skin stung. Futile. The stains were too deep. My life was in my hands, written in black. Finally, I forced myself out. Every step toward that enormous door felt like a sentence. I pressed the bell. The chime echoed deep through the cavernous halls inside. The door opened. And there she was, Sophia. Her eyes found me, wide and horrified, her breath catching. "Mark," she whispered. "Oh my God. What happened to you?" I tried calling. I was so worried. I wanted to comfort her, but all I had were apologies.
Saf, I'm sorry.
I can explain. There was an old woman. Her car had broken down. I couldn't just drive past. I didn't get to finish. From the shadows of the hallway behind her, they appeared. Richard and Eleanor Prescott. The infamous parents. They looked like royalty. He tall, silver hair, smoking jacket cut like armor. She, every inch polished elegance, diamonds at her ears, pearls at her neck, her expression cold and sharp. Their eyes flicked from their daughter's panic to me. And then I saw it. That look. Not mere disapproval. Not even disdain. It was contempt. Pure and raw. Richard's voice sliced through the air, low and cutting. "So, this is him. The mechanic." I tried. God, I tried. "Mr. and Mrs. Prescott, I'm so sorry for being late." There was a woman on the road. Her vintage car broke down. I stopped to help. His hand rose. A silent command that shut me down instantly. "We don't care for excuses," he said, each word polished with scorn. "In our world, punctuality isn't optional. It is respect. And you have failed at the very first test." Eleanor stepped forward then, her eyes glinting cruelly as they raked over me, my hands, my suit, my sweat. A smile tugged at her lips, sweet and venomous all at once. "Sophia told us you work with your hands. I see you've made no effort to hide it. How rustic." I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Their words hit like bullets, leaving me stripped bare. Richard turned away, already done with me. His voice was final, cold as stone. "I think it's best we reschedule this visit, Mark. Perhaps for a time when your friend can present himself with a shred of dignity. Until then," he dismissed me with his back. The conversation was over. The silver cloud came alive under her hands. That deep, powerful rumble rolled through the air like thunder echoing across open fields. The moment the engine settled into its steady hum, her face broke into the kind of smile that belonged to someone who had just been given back a piece of her soul. "Young man," she exclaimed, her voice rich with gratitude, "you are a miracle worker. How can I possibly repay you?" I shook my head, wiping my hands on a rag already soaked with black. "Just knowing she's running again is all I need." Her sharp eyes lingered on mine. Intelligent.
Piercing.
And for a second, something softer flickered there. Respect. Maybe even admiration. She nodded, a graceful bow of acknowledgement, then slid behind the wheel. The Rolls moved forward with quiet majesty, its headlights glowing in the dusk, carrying her away like a queen in a chariot reborn. I stood there in the silence, watching her disappear, chest full of pride. That warm feeling lasted only a heartbeat. Then I looked down, my hands black with grease. My watch merciless. Over an hour late. The sun was bleeding into the horizon, a molten ball sinking behind the trees. 6 o'clock had come and gone. The dinner had already begun. My stomach tightened into a knot of dread. I whispered my excuse to myself as I drove the last stretch. An elderly woman. A broken car. I had to help, but even to my own ears it sounded flimsy. Pathetic. Like the kind of lie a desperate schoolboy invents to explain why he's late for class. Sophia had been clear. Her parents valued one thing above all else: appearances. And here I was, hands stained, pants ruined, dignity hanging by a thread. The estate rose before me, introduced by 2 massive stone pillars.
Nogate.
Just the kind of old money arrogance that said, "We don't need locks." No one would dare cross this line. The driveway unfurled like a white ribbon of crushed gravel, winding through manicured perfection. Trees, lawns, hedges, all sculpted to flawlessness. And then I saw it. The house. Calling it a house was an insult. It was a monument. A Georgian manor stretching wide and high, 3 stories of red brick and glittering glass, every window glowing warm gold like a floating palace adrift in the darkening countryside. I pulled my truck into the circle drive. Parked at the edge, my pride and joy suddenly reduced to a humble dinghy bobbing beside sleek German yachts, Mercedes, Audis, Bentleys. I didn't move. My hands clamped to the wheel, heart pounding so hard it shook me. I reached for the glove box, pulled out a crumpled napkin, and scrubbed desperately at the grease embedded in my skin. Pointless. The stains were part of me, etched deep into who I was. This was it. I stepped out. Every crunch of gravel under my boots felt deafening. The walk to that massive front door stretched out like a march to judgment. I pressed the bell. The sound echoed inside, low and sonorous, as though I had rung a cathedral bell instead of a door. The door swung open. And there was Sophia. Her eyes widened instantly, horror spreading across her beautiful face. "Mark," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Oh my God, what happened? Are you hurt?" I tried calling, I was so worried. I shook my head, words tumbling out low and heavy.
I'm sorry, Saf.
I can explain. There was an old woman, her car broke down. I had to stop and help. I never finished. From the grand hallway behind her, 2 figures emerged, drawn into the porch light like shadows stepping into focus. Richard and Eleanor Prescott.
I had heard about them.
But no description prepared me for the sight. Richard, tall, silver hair, his smoking jacket cut so perfectly it looked like it had been born on him. His face was carved stone, aristocratic and cold. Eleanor, flawless in her pearls and diamonds, her elegance weaponized into something sharper than steel. Their eyes fell on Sophia first, on her panic. Then they turned to me, and in that instant I knew. This wasn't mere disapproval. It was contempt. The kind of contempt that doesn't need words because it has already passed judgment. Richard spoke, his voice low and polished, every syllable like glass cutting the air. "So, this is him, the mechanic." I scrambled for my lines, the speech I had rehearsed burning away like paper in fire. "Mr. and Mrs. Prescott, I'm so sorry for being late. There was a woman on the road, her vintage car broke down, and He raised a hand, a gesture of command that shut me down before I could breathe. "We do not care for excuses," he said, his voice calm but brutal. "In our world, punctuality is not optional. It is the foundation of respect. And you, young man, have failed at the very first step." Eleanor moved closer, her eyes raking over me like cold blades. She studied my hands, the grease, the dirt on my suit, and then she smiled. Not a kind smile, a cruel one. "Sophia told us you work with your hands," she said softly, venom lacing her tone. "I see you've made no effort to hide it. How quaint." I couldn't answer, couldn't defend myself. Their words had stripped me bare, left me standing there exposed and humiliated. Richard's voice returned, final and absolute. He wasn't looking at me anymore. He was looking at his daughter. "I think it's best if we reschedule this visit, Mark. Perhaps for a time when your friend can present himself with the dignity this house requires." Then he turned his back. A dismissal so complete, so final, it didn't need another word, defeat. It was a taste I'll never forget, cold, metallic, bitter as ash. I had failed. I had walked into their world, tried to stand tall inside it, and lost before I could even open my mouth. I looked at Sophia one last time. Her eyes were wet, desperate, full of a pain that mirrored my own. I wanted to tell her everything I couldn't say aloud. "I'm sorry. I tried. I wanted to be enough for you, but I never will be in their eyes." That look was my silent apology, my surrender. I turned, ready to vanish into the night. The porch stretched before me like a stage I'd been dragged across and booed off. My future with Sophia already felt like it was slipping away, floating higher and colder, unreachable as the stars overhead. And then sound. A sound I knew by heart. That rumble. Deep. Resonant.
Familiar.
A Rolls-Royce V12, alive and breathing. Headlights burst across the lawn, cutting through the dark, flooding us all in their sharp glare. My body froze, one hand gripping the railing. My heart kicked once, hard, like it recognized hope even before my mind could.
I knew that sound.
I knew that car. The silver beast glided into the drive, a vision of polished chrome and quiet power. It rolled to a stop behind my battered truck, the contrast between them almost absurd. Royalty parking beside a farmhand. No one moved. Not Richard. Not Eleanor. Not Sophia. Even the air seemed to hesitate. The Prescotts' faces twisted into annoyance, their smug triumph interrupted by an intrusion they couldn't yet name. Sophia's face shifted too, her grief now replaced with something searching, something unsure. Then came the soft click of the driver's door. A chauffeur emerged, dark suit, perfect gloves, every movement practiced, refined. He circled the car, reached for the rear door, and opened it with reverence. A pale hand appeared first. Elegant.
Steady.
A single sapphire ring, massive, commanding, caught the light and held it like a prisoner. Then she stepped out. Her. The woman from the side of the road. But here, under the lights of her own kingdom, she wasn't just a stranded traveler. She wasn't just an elderly lady in distress. She was something far greater. Mother. Eleanor's voice cracked, shrill, her composure shattering. What on earth are you doing here, in that old thing? I told you the driver would bring you in the town car. But, Matilda Prescott. Sophia's grandmother, the matriarch everyone whispered about with awe and dread, ignored her entirely. She didn't spare her daughter a single glance. Her eyes swept the porch with surgical precision. Richard's stiff posture. Eleanor's guilt wrapped in pearls. Sophia's tear-streaked face. And finally me. Grease-stained hands. Dirt on my knees. Suit rumpled. Pride hanging by a thread. She studied me the way a master craftswoman studies an object, examining not just flaws but the truth of its making. Her gaze didn't carry judgment. It carried weight, consideration, calculation. And then she smiled.
Slow.
Knowing. A smile filled with humor, but deeper still, with respect. Her voice rang out, strong and sharp as a bell. Richard. Eleanor. The effect was instant. The mighty Prescotts, rulers of this house, shrank before her. In that moment, they weren't lords of the manor. They were children caught in the act. She lifted her jeweled hand toward me. This young man you're so eager to throw off your porch, do you know what he's just done? He spent nearly an hour on his back in the dirt, fixing my car. Your car, Richard, if you'd had the sense to appreciate it, instead of leaving me stranded like your driver so incompetently managed to do. Richard's throat worked, his voice weak, nothing like the cold authority he had thrown at me moments ago. Mother, we know, he arrived late. He's a mess. Matilda cut him off with a flick of her hand. A queen silencing a courtier. A mess? Her eyes gleamed with dangerous amusement. This is not a mess, Richard. This, her gaze swept over my stained hands, is the mark of a man who works. A man who stops for a stranger when others would drive by, even when it costs him dearly. She turned her icy gaze on Eleanor. Character, Eleanor. Something you cannot purchase. Something I see far too little of in this house. They were silent. Richard. Eleanor. Reduced to stone figures in their own home. Matilda shifted, and now all her attention was mine. That smile returned, softer this time, warm and disarming. You have my gratitude, young man. You gave me your skill, your time, and most importantly, your kindness, without asking for a single thing in return. And then she did something no one on that porch expected. She reached for my arm. Her hand was light but firm, her grip surprisingly strong. And just like that, she made a declaration far louder than words. Come, Mark, she said, her voice carrying both command and delight. I believe I've arrived just in time to spare you a painfully dull evening. You'll join me for dinner. I climbed the steps at her side. Not as the mechanic dismissed. Not as the intruder rejected. but as the chosen guest of Matilda Prescott, the only woman in that dynasty who made titans tremble. And in that instant, everything changed. The interrogation I had feared never came. It ended before it even began. But as I turned and saw the pale, shaken faces of Richard and Eleanor, I realized something even more chilling. A trial was about to begin, but it wasn't mine. This time it was theirs. And their judge had just arrived. I stepped across the threshold of the Prescott mansion not as a beggar asking for acceptance, not as the late and disgraced guest they thought me to be, but as the honored escort of the one woman whose power in this house was beyond question. The air inside was cool, heavy with the scent of polished wood and beeswax, the faint perfume of roses from some unseen vase, and the delicious aroma of duck roasting somewhere deep within the house. The marble beneath my boots gleamed under the light. A butler stood in the foyer, impossibly tall, impossibly thin, his face the mask of perfect service. But even perfection cracks. His eyes flicked down to my grease-stained hands, the rumpled suit, the dirt still clinging to my knees. For the briefest second, horror flashed across his face. And then discipline. Neutrality returned. His eyes shifted to the woman at my side. "Matilda, you've returned," he said softly, with the kind of reverence priests save for their saints. "Yes, Henderson," she replied, brisk and cheerful. "This is Mr. Mark O'Connell. Please set another place at the table. At my right hand." It was subtle, almost nothing. Just a command. But the butler's eyes betrayed a flicker of surprise. That seat was no ordinary seat. It was the throne beside the Queen, the place of honor. Richard had long coveted it. Tonight it would belong to me. Behind us, Richard and Eleanor followed in silence, their regal confidence gone. They no longer looked like masters of this estate. They looked like children trailing their mother after scolding. Sophia brought up the rear. Her eyes were wide, shining, her lips pressed tight, as if holding back laughter and relief all at once. We entered the dining hall. It was absurd in its grandeur. A table stretched so long it could have landed an airplane, yet only 5 settings gleamed in the candlelight. Gold-rimmed china, crystal glasses, silver polished, so bright it mirrored the flames. I sat at the seat Matilda indicated, the seat of honor, and for a moment I felt like an imposter, a mechanic lost in a royal court, somehow mistaken for a prince. And then the performance began. It wasn't a dinner. It was theater. 90 minutes of quiet, devastating theater, directed by Matilda Prescott herself. Every move calculated, every word a blade. She ignored her children. Not once did she turn to them. Not once did she acknowledge their existence. Her attention never strayed from me. She didn't ask me about wealth or bloodline, or what future I could provide her granddaughter.
No. She asked about me.
"So, Mark," she began, once Henderson poured us both a rich ruby wine. "Tell me, that Silver Cloud a magnificent car, but temperamental, isn't it? The fuel pump alone is a nightmare. How does one keep the pressure steady?" I blinked. For the first time that evening, I felt steady ground beneath me. My voice found strength. And I told her about engines, about craft, about patience and art, about the beauty of a carburetor, the satisfaction of hand-forging a part, the quiet thrill of coaxing life back into a forgotten machine. I didn't speak like a man covered in grease. I spoke like an artisan, someone who loved what he built. And she listened. Truly listened. Her eyes, sharp, intelligent, impossibly focused, never left mine. She asked questions. Insightful ones. Her interest was real, her curiosity genuine. Richard, unable to stand being invisible, finally snapped. His voice cut through the air too loud, too desperate. "Speaking of investments, Mother, the market for pre-war classics is collapsing. Hardly the time to." Matilda silenced him with a single wave of her jeweled hand. She didn't even look at him. "Richard, please. Tonight, we are speaking of things that matter. Tangible things. Things built by real hands."
Mark is a man who creates. He repairs.
He saves what others would discard. "Tell me, When was the last time you built anything at all? The words hit harder than a slap. Richard recoiled, cheeks darkening. He shrank back into silence, wounded pride burning, but too cowardly to flare again. Later, Eleanor tried to recover some dignity. The duck is exquisite, isn't it, Mother? I had it flown in from New York, just this morning. Matilda lifted her fork, took a delicate bite, and chewed with thought. She swallowed, then turned not to her daughter, but to me. It's good, she said calmly. But you know, Mark, a meal, no matter how fine, cannot compare to the satisfaction of an engine restored. An old machine, brought back from the brink by skilled hands, now that is nourishment for the soul. Don't you agree? I smiled. For the first time that evening, I felt the rhythm of her game. Yes, ma'am.
Ido.
And so it went. Course after course, the meal unfolded not as dinner, but as a coronation. I was no longer the outsider. I was the guest of honor, the man at her right hand. And they, the Prescotts, were left to watch in silence as their mother exalted the man they had mocked. Across the table, Sophia's eyes met mine. They glistened, full of love, full of pride. Pride so deep it made my chest ache with something fierce and radiant. She was seeing me as I was, and as I had always wanted her to see me, not shamed, not diminished, but celebrated. When the final plates were cleared and the coffee poured, Matilda made her move. Her voice was soft, but her words struck like thunder. It has been a very long time, she said, her gaze sweeping down the table at her silent children, since I have sat here and had a conversation of substance, of integrity. Tonight gives me hope for the future of this family. Then her eyes locked on mine. They sharpened, carrying a glint of something more. Not just respect, strategy, purpose. And I knew this night was not finished. Mark, she said, her voice calm, steady, but carrying the weight of history. My late husband, Sophia's grandfather, was a man consumed by his love for classic automobiles. His collection, his pride and joy, has sat untouched in the West Garage for nearly 2 decades. Machines worth fortunes. Machines unlike anything else in the world. And for 20 years they've been left to gather dust, slowly decaying in silence. No one in this family had the interest or the skill to care for them. Her eyes locked onto mine. The warmth of grandmotherly charm shifted into something sharper. Authority.
Command.
She leaned forward, her voice now that of a CEO delivering an offer no one could refuse. I believe, she said, her lips curving into a triumphant smile, I've just found the man to take it on. Tomorrow morning, we will discuss the terms of your new role, the official curator of the Prescott Automobile Collection. My jaw dropped. I must have looked like a fool, but I couldn't stop myself. I glanced at Richard, at Eleanor. Their faces were frozen, pale, horrified, like paintings of disbelief. Matilda hadn't just accepted me. She hadn't just welcomed me into her family. She had placed me in charge of the crown jewels. The greasy mechanic they tried to throw out of their home had just been entrusted with their father's priceless legacy. The silence that followed was breathtaking. Not tense. Not fragile. No. This silence was deafening in its finality. It was the sound of their entire world being overturned, their judgment exposed as hollow, their arrogance dismantled. I looked at Sophia. Her eyes shimmered with radiant joy. It wasn't just happiness. It was vindication. The man she loved, the man they dismissed as common, had just been knighted by the queen of their empire. Richard looked stricken, as though Matilda's words had struck him like a fist. His mouth opened, closed, opened again, useless. Eleanor sat frozen. Her glass of wine halted midair, her face pale as marble. They had lost. In their home, at their table, they had been utterly defeated. Their judgment had been judged and found wanting. I finally managed to speak, my voice trembling with humility. Ma'am, I don't know what to say. That is an incredibly generous offer. I'd be honored. Matilda waved her hand, dismissive yet smiling, her eyes sparkling with delight.
Nonsense.
This is not generosity, Mark. It's practicality. I am preserving my husband's legacy from turning to dust in the hands of people who see only dollar signs. You see the soul in the machine. That is a gift. A gift that cannot be bought. Hours later, after long conversation about engines and the elegant beauty of a Duesenberg, Sophia and I rose to leave. But Richard and Eleanor weren't finished. In the grand foyer, they made one last desperate attempt. "Mother, you cannot be serious," Eleanor hissed, her voice sharp with fury. "You cannot actually plan to give this grease monkey access to Father's collection. It's priceless. It's our family's heritage." And then I saw Matilda change. The warmth vanished. The soft grandmother disappeared. In her place stood a towering figure of cold, regal power. Her voice was ice. Her presence, terrifying. "Eleanor," she said, each syllable a blade, "let me make this perfectly clear. This family's heritage is not its cars, its houses, or its docks. This family's heritage was meant to be character. Integrity, a quality this young man has in abundance, and a quality you and your husband," her eyes cut to Richard with contempt sharp enough to wound, "have shown a shocking lack of tonight." I stood frozen. Even I stepped back from her sheer force. Then she turned, softening only for me. "Mark has my full and complete confidence. He is skilled. He is decent. He is kind. He is exactly what this family needs. And you will show him the respect he has earned." Do I make myself clear? Eleanor's voice was barely a whisper. "Yes, Mother." Her eyes fixed on the floor. Matilda smiled again, the storm passing. She looked at me as though nothing had happened. "Henderson will give you the keys to the west garage in the morning. Have fun." And with that, the war was over. The months that followed were a quiet revolution. Our wedding was beautiful, joyful. My in-laws attended, their smiles stiff, their behavior polished. But I knew the truth. They were terrified of Matilda, terrified of her favor resting squarely on me. The morning after our honeymoon, Sophia and I walked into the west garage for the first time. It was a cathedral, a temple of steel and dust and forgotten glory. Bugattis, Ferraris, American muscle legends lined up in silence, waiting to breathe again. I felt it in my bones. Purpose.
Not a job.
Not an obligation. A calling. Matilda insisted that Richard and Eleanor join me there at times.
She wanted them to watch.
To see my hands stained in honest grease, explaining carburetors, timing chains, the delicate rebirth of engines. It wasn't just work. It was her quiet revenge. A reminder of the man they had tried to reject. Thriving, honored, triumphant. Months later, Sophia and I took one of the restorations, a 1965 Jaguar E-Type, out into the countryside. The sun was falling low, painting the sky gold and crimson. The air was cool, the engine purred, and Sophia sat beside me, her face glowing with happiness. As the road stretched ahead, I thought back to that first dreadful night. The nerves, the fear, the urge to hide who I was, to present myself as someone respectable. And yet, it hadn't been wealth or pretense that won this life. It was kindness, a simple act of honesty. A mechanic stopping to help a stranger with a broken car. That was all it took. That was everything. My victory wasn't in their humiliation. It was in the truth. The truth that I hadn't been accepted despite who I was. I had been welcomed, celebrated, lifted because of it. Grease stains and all. And in that Jaguar, with Sophia's hand resting on mine, I knew I had found more than love. I had found family. A family built not on appearances, but on character. And that is the only heritage worth preserving.
I'm Elaine.
I'm 28 years old. And yesterday, I became a millionaire. $2 million. A Victorian mansion that feels more like a memory than a home. Business shares I don't yet understand. My Aunt Vivian left me everything. And yet, in the middle of my grief, while the air in that lawyer's office still carried the weight of her absence, they appeared. My parents. The very same people who walked out of my life 15 years ago without a single goodbye. They stood there smiling, like time hadn't carved a canyon between us. My mother tilted her head, her voice honeyed and soft. "We are your guardians." And then the lawyer stepped inside, their faces drained of color, as if someone had pulled the earth out from under them. Before I unravel this story, let me ask, where are you watching from right now? Drop it in the comments. And if you've ever had to face toxic family members who thought they could rewrite history with a smile, hit that like button.
Subscribe.
Join this community of stories where truth cuts deeper than fiction. But to understand me, you have to know where I came from. There was a time when my life was ordinary, stable, even. Until I turned 13, I lived in a modest 2-bedroom apartment with parents who, at least back then, appeared to love me. My father worked at a car dealership as a sales manager. My mother taught 3rd grade at the school down the street. We weren't rich, but we had enough. Friday nights meant movies and cheap microwave popcorn. Summers meant camping trips in a battered old tent that smelled of pine and damp earth. Christmas mornings smelled of hot chocolate and cinnamon rolls, the kind that came from a can but felt like luxury. Looking back now, the signs were there. I just didn't have the wisdom to see them. The whispers behind closed doors that turned into louder arguments. The late-night phone calls my father always took outside. The overtime shifts that left him staggering home, not smelling of car polish but of cigarettes and alcohol. Poker started as his weekend escape. Friendly games with friends. But harmless games turned into weekends at Atlantic City. I still remember my mother's muffled sobs one night, her voice trembling as she begged him to stop before we lost everything. He promised he would. But my father's promises were loose change, tossed carelessly, never meant to hold value. And then Mom began to fade too. Her bright laughter dimmed. She called in sick to work more often, lying in bed for days with curtains drawn tight. The refrigerator emptied until there was almost nothing left. When I asked about groceries, she snapped, her voice sharp, telling me to make do. Some days she would stare at me like she was memorizing my face, then collapse into tears and lock herself in the bathroom. I thought I could fix it. I tried to be perfect. Good grades. Clean apartment. Quiet compliance. Never complained about the worn-out clothes that no longer fit. I believed, naively, that if I was good enough, everything would return to the way it used to be. The day they left is etched into me. It was a Tuesday in October, colder than it should have been for fall. I woke up late, no mother's voice calling me for school. The apartment was too quiet, unnervingly still. Their bedroom door was wide open. Strange. Mom always kept it shut during her bad days. The closet was half empty, hangers swaying in the draft. Drawers yanked open, only a few socks left behind. On the kitchen counter, a single sheet of paper. 16 words, written in my mother's hand. "Elaine, we cannot do this anymore. Your Aunt Vivian will take care of you. We are sorry."
Just like that.
13 years reduced to a line and a half. I called my mother's phone over and over, each unanswered ring tightening my chest until it hurt to breathe. My father's number had already been disconnected. I searched through drawers, old notebooks, anything that could give me answers. Nothing. I barely knew Aunt Vivian. She was my father's older sister.
Stern. Businesslike.
Distant. Twice in my life, I had met her.
Twice.
She had never married, never had children, and, according to my parents, never approved of their choices. I didn't even know if she was aware of what they had done. That night, I stayed alone, terrified to tell anyone. What if they sent me to foster care? What if my parents came back and I wasn't there? I lived on dry cereal, cried myself to sleep on the couch with the phone beside me, waiting for a call that would never come. Day 2, the landlord knocked. His eyes narrowed when I explained my parents were away. He muttered about rent and calling social services. Day 3, I broke. I called my school counselor. Within hours, Child Protective Services were at my door. The social worker, Miss Dawson, had a voice like warm blankets on a winter night. Gentle, steady, kind. She made phone calls, pulled strings, and somehow, She found Aunt Vivian. I still hear her words through the receiver. Your niece has been abandoned. The alternatives are foster care or a pause. I understand it's sudden, but she has no one else. Another pause. Tomorrow morning would be best. She cannot stay in the apartment alone another night. The next day, Aunt Vivian arrived. A black car gleaming in the cracked pavement of our neighborhood. She stepped out in a charcoal gray suit, pearls at her throat, her silver-streaked hair pulled tight. Her face carried no joy, no pity, only a stern resolve, as if duty had dragged her there. Pack what you can carry, she said. Her voice clipped, efficient, but not unkind. The social workers filled out papers while I stuffed clothes into a single suitcase and slid photo albums and books into my backpack. I left behind the glow-in-the-dark stars on my ceiling, the ones I'd whispered wishes to as a child. The drive to her house lasted 3 hours. She hardly spoke, except to ask if I was hungry or if I needed to stop. I sat in silence, clutching my bag, staring out at a future I couldn't imagine. I pressed my forehead against the cool glass, staring out the car window as everything I knew slipped into the distance. My world reduced to a shrinking blur in the rear-view mirror. The process of making Aunt Vivian my legal guardian was long, messy, and exhausting. Courtrooms with echoing ceilings. Judges whose questions made me feel small. Endless forms, psychological evaluations, more social workers than I could keep track of. Through it all, Aunt Vivian never flinched. She wasn't tender, not the type to wrap me in hugs or murmur reassurances. But she stood firm. She hired sharp lawyers, kept her promises, and never once hinted at sending me away, even when the hearings dragged on for months. My parents never came. Not once. The court tried to track them down, to serve papers, to formally sever their parental rights. But they had vanished so completely, it was as if they'd never existed. No return addresses. No forwarding numbers. Just gone. The abandonment cut deep. Therapy dulled the pain, but it never erased the wound. For years, I would wake up in the middle of the night, sure I had heard the door creak open, that they had come back, ready to tell me it was all a mistake. I wrote letters to them, spilling everything I couldn't say aloud, but never had an address to send them to. In crowded malls, I searched faces, convinced I caught glimpses of my mother's profile, the slope of my father's shoulders. Hope stalked me like a shadow I couldn't shake. Dr. Freeman, the therapist Aunt Vivian found for me, tried to ground me. Adults make adult choices for adult problems, she would tell me gently. Children blame themselves because it gives them control. If it's your fault, then maybe you could fix it. But Elaine, this was never yours to fix. The logic was solid, but my heart refused to hear it. Time wore down my desperate search. By 18, I no longer turned my head every time someone called my name in a crowd. By 20, I stopped drafting imaginary reunions in my journal. By 25, I finally accepted the truth. The people who had once been my parents were gone forever. Through all of it, Aunt Vivian remained. Not warm, not affectionate, but solid as stone. She never broke a promise, never missed an appointment, never failed to provide. It wasn't the love I had lost, but it was something real, dependable, unshakable. Moving into her house felt like stepping onto another planet. The mansion rose from 2 manicured acres, ringed by a wrought iron fence that seemed designed to keep the world out. My bedroom was larger than our entire old apartment. Velvet curtains blocked the morning sun. An antique 4-poster bed loomed like it belonged in some period drama. But with privilege came rules.
Dozens of them.
Breakfast at 7 sharp. Beds made before school. No shoes on the polished hardwood. Piano practice, 1 hour daily, talent irrelevant. Homework done at the desk, never on the couch, never sprawled across the bed. Dinner conversation had requirements too. 1 current event, 1 personal achievement. Weeknights, no television. I broke every rule that first month. Testing her. Pushing boundaries. Part of me hoping she'd give up on me before I had to relive the pain of being abandoned again. But Aunt Vivian didn't flinch.
No dramatic punishments.
No threats to ship me away. Just logical consequences. Missed breakfast? No second chance. Kitchen closed at 7:30. Homework incomplete? Weekend plans canceled until it met her standard. Yet sometimes, behind her steel exterior, something softer flickered. The night she found me crying over a photo of my parents on their wedding day, she didn't scold. She handed me a handkerchief and sat beside me silently until the tears stopped. When I failed a math test after weeks of studying, she didn't question my intelligence. She hired a tutor. Aunt Vivian had built her fortune with grit. What started as a modest inheritance became a chain of 30 upscale home decor boutiques stretched across 3 states. She worked long hours, but always came home for dinner. Afterward, she often sat at the table, papers spread before her, reviewing contracts late into the night. On weekends, she sometimes took me along to meetings. "Watch closely," she whispered. "See who speaks first, who concedes, who holds eye contact. Business is psychology in motion." Education was sacred to her. When the local public school failed to meet her standards, she pulled me out and placed me at Westfield Academy, a private school with tiny classes, ruthless expectations, and classmates who seemed born into wealth. I floundered at first. Hours hunched over books, fighting to catch up. Nights when I wanted to throw it all away, convinced I'd never belong. But Aunt Vivian refused to let me quit. One night, when geometry proofs reduced me to tears, she said firmly, "Your circumstances changed through no fault of your own.
But your response to them is your choice.
Use this opportunity or waste it. I don't invest in lost causes." It wasn't the comfort I wanted, but her bluntness steadied me. I found a peer tutor, started study groups. Little by little, the fog lifted. By junior year, my name appeared on the honor roll. College applications brought a new battle. I wanted the state university, where friends were heading. Aunt Vivian pushed for prestigious schools. "Your friends are chasing comfort," she told me flatly. "You need to chase your future." That difference in vision led to our biggest fight yet. The argument with Aunt Vivian was brutal. Years of tension compressed into sharp words flung across the dinner table. "You're trying to control my life," I snapped, voice trembling with anger and something more dangerous, fear. Her eyes narrowed, her tone calm but unyielding. "You're wasting potential because you're too afraid to leave your comfort zone. I never asked to be your project." My voice cracked, louder than I intended. "And I never asked to be your guardian," she replied coolly, not raising her voice, not blinking. "Yet here we are. I am trying to give you choices your parents never had." Silence swallowed the room. Her words cut deeper than any punishment. Then, for the first time, she lowered her armor. She told me about my father. "He was brilliant," she whispered, softer than I'd ever heard her. "He could solve math problems in his head like puzzles. But our parents couldn't afford college. He worked at a gas station while I went on a scholarship. He resented me for that. Gambling became his shortcut, a quick way to chase what education had denied him. Your mother was the same.
Right.
Trapped by circumstances. I'm trying to end that cycle for you." It was the first time she'd spoken of my parents without scorn. A window opened, just a crack, giving me a glimpse into who they had been before the ruin. For the first time, I understood why her determination felt so merciless, because it wasn't just about me. It was about rewriting a family story. I applied to 7 schools. Got into 5.
Et chose northwestern.
Business and marketing. Aunt Vivian paid every cent, never once making me feel the weight of the tuition, though I knew it was heavy. College was a different kind of battlefield. New freedoms. New challenges. I found myself in clubs I'd never known existed, making friends from backgrounds I couldn't have imagined. Somewhere between late-night study sessions and design workshops, I discovered a talent for marketing, how strategy and creativity could blend into something powerful. Summers, I worked in Aunt Vivian's company. She had me everywhere. Stockrooms, vendor meetings, marketing pitches. "See how people negotiate," she would instruct. "Notice who blinks first." Business is human psychology. Our relationship shifted during those years. The physical distance, softened the emotional walls. Our Sunday calls grew warmer. Laughter even slipped in now and then. When I graduated with honors, her pride shone through her eyes. Her public gesture was minimal, a handshake, a nod, but it was enough. It meant everything. I moved back into her home, stepping into the role of marketing director. We became two women under the same roof, independent, stubborn, bound not by blood, but by something stronger. We shared occasional meals, worked late nights in silence, sometimes even enjoyed each other's company. I dated here and there, but Aunt Vivian's disapproval always lingered like a shadow. "Don't let distractions derail your future," she'd say. And then came the earthquake. 2 years ago, Aunt Vivian was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. The prognosis was grim from the start. She faced it like she faced everything else: discipline, order, control. "We all die," she told me when I broke down, my face buried in my hands. "The only question is when, and how we choose to use the time before that happens." She kept working until she couldn't, handing me more responsibility as her strength faded. Our roles reversed quietly. I became the one keeping schedules, managing medications, arranging doctor visits. And in those final months, the iron in her voice softened. One evening, as I helped her into bed, she gripped my hand tightly. Her whisper shook me more than any lecture ever had. "You were the daughter I never let myself have. Taking you in was the best decision of my life." 8 months after the diagnosis, she slipped away in her sleep. Peaceful, quiet, final. Her funeral was small: business associates, distant relatives. I stood by the graveside, numb, realizing she had become my true parent in every way that mattered. Grief hollowed me out. The house felt too large, too empty. I caught myself listening for her footsteps, saving articles I thought she'd like, only to remember she was gone. But the business didn't wait. I kept it alive the way she had taught me: practical action over empty sentiment. Carrying her legacy was how I survived. 3 weeks later, a letter arrived from Harold Thompson, Vivian's attorney of 30 years. The will reading was set for Tuesday, 10 a.m., at his downtown office. The letter said all interested parties would attend. I assumed it meant me, maybe some executives, maybe charities she had supported. Thompson was distinguished, a man carved out of oak and time. 70s. Silver hair. Wire-rimmed glasses he peered over like he was weighing your soul. His office smelled of leather and old paper, the wood panels dark, the massive desk scarred with history. I arrived early, in a navy suit Aunt Vivian would have approved of. Thompson greeted me, offered condolences, then mentioned we were waiting on others. I sat down, flipping through a business magazine, the words a blur. The door opened. I looked up, expecting one of Vivian's executives. Time froze. It wasn't an executive. It was them. My parents. My father, so changed. Hair once thick and dark, now thin to gray. Deep lines carved down his face. His shoulders bent, as if carrying years of weight no one else could see. He had gained 50 pounds, maybe more. His body was soft, unrecognizable. And my mother. She looked even more altered. My mother was almost unrecognizable. Her blonde hair had been hacked into a severe cut that hardened her already angular face. Her skin looked thin, stretched, almost brittle. Dark shadows pooled beneath her eyes. When she smiled, it was the kind of smile that never reached the soul. Her dress was outdated, at least 10 years past its prime. She clutched her purse so tightly her knuckles blanched white, as though letting go meant losing everything. Elaine. My father's voice was rough, gravelly, broken down by years I hadn't witnessed. Look at you. All grown up. My body moved before my mind caught up, legs trembling as I stood. They stepped closer. My mother reached for me. I froze. Her arms wrapped around me, but I remained stiff, my body refusing to remember the comfort it once craved. Her perfume lingered, once familiar, now foreign, almost hostile. "We've been trying to find you," she said, pulling back to study me like I was a stranger she half recognized. You look so much like Vivian. So sophisticated. How did you even know about today? My voice came out hollow, unsteady. How did you know? The obituary, my father admitted. His attempt at a smile collapsed into something heavy with regret. We've been keeping tabs from a distance. We always knew you were with Vivian. Of course they knew. They'd known all along. And yet, 15 years of silence. No phone calls. No letters.
No explanation.
Just absence. My stomach flipped. The air in the room seemed to tilt. Please sit, Mr. Thompson interjected gently, gesturing toward the polished leather chairs. We have one more person joining us. The door opened and Mrs. Bentley entered. Vivian's housekeeper of 2 decades. She had always been kind in her quiet, disciplined way. She nodded at me, sympathy softening her usually reserved expression, and deliberately took a seat far from my parents. We waited. My parents filled the silence with small talk that felt grotesque. We live in Arizona now, my mother offered, forcing a smile. The weather helps with your father's arthritis. I manage a convenience store, my father added. Not glamorous, but steady work. I nodded without hearing. Words rose and fell around me like static. Inside, my emotions clashed violently. Anger, confusion, grief, and a dangerous flicker of longing that I despised myself for feeling. Finally, Thompson cleared his throat, adjusting his glasses. We are here to execute the last will and testament of Vivian Eleanor Hughes, he began. My parents leaned forward ever so slightly. It was subtle, but in that moment the truth seared into me. They weren't here for me. They were here for money. Thompson continued, his voice precise. To my niece, Elaine Margaret Winters, I leave the entirety of my estate. And then came the avalanche, her home at Lakeview Drive, with its manicured grounds and antiques. Her full ownership of Hughes Home Collections, $12 million worth. Every bank account, every investment, $2 million in liquid assets.
Jewelry.
Artwork.
Cars.
Intellectual property. Everything. The room went silent. I had expected something. A portion. A token of her faith. But not this. The sheer scale of it struck me like a blow. My father coughed softly, leaning forward. Excuse me, Mr. Thompson. Is there anything else? Thompson's gaze sharpened over the rims of his glasses. There are modest bequests to long-time employees, he said, nodding toward Mrs. Bentley. And provisions for annual charitable donations. But the bulk of the estate passes, as stated, to Elaine. My mother's lips curled into a tight smile. She placed her hand over mine, and the touch felt like an intrusion. This is quite a responsibility for someone so young, she murmured. Fortunately, as her parents, we're in a position to help. Her words made my skin crawl. Legally speaking, my father added, forcing a casual tone that fooled no one, since Elaine was still a minor when Vivian took her in, and our rights were never formally terminated, we remain her guardians. We'd be happy to oversee her inheritance until she has more experience. The panic hit like ice water in my veins. My breath caught. My chest tightened. After 15 years of abandonment, they wanted control. Not of me, but of what Vivian had left me. I opened my mouth, but Thompson spoke first, his tone firm, almost protective. There appears to be some confusion regarding legal status. I'll prepare the relevant documentation. Why don't we reconvene tomorrow at 2 o'clock? My parents exchanged a look. My father nodded. That's fine. We're at the Westmont Hotel. Perhaps we could have lunch before then, Elaine? Catch up properly. Before I could answer, Thompson rose, his presence commanding. If you'll excuse us, I need a few private moments with Elaine regarding her immediate responsibilities. Reluctant, my parents gathered their coats. My mother leaned in for another embrace I couldn't return. We have so much to talk about, sweetheart. My father pressed a business card into my hand. Their cell numbers were scrawled on the back. Call anytime. Day or night. We've got 15 years to make up for. The door shut behind them. The silence was crushing. My hands shook as I collapsed into the chair. They can't possibly have a legal claim, I whispered to Thompson, desperation clawing at my throat. Can they, mister? Thompson's face darkened as the door closed behind my parents. His words carried the weight of warning. You should prepare yourself. Tomorrow may not be easy. Your aunt anticipated this, but I'll need time to gather her contingency plans. Mrs. Bentley paused on her way out. She touched my shoulder gently, her first real gesture of affection in years. Your aunt was wise, she said softly. She would never leave you unprotected.
Trust that.
Her words lingered in the silence after she left. I stumbled into the elevator, my phone buzzing with 3 calls from my mother. I ignored them all. The childhood dream I'd clung to, that one day my parents would come back for me, had finally come true. But instead of joy, all I felt was dread. And yet, against my better judgment, I agreed to dinner. Thompson had advised waiting until our meeting tomorrow. But something in me still needed answers. Answers only they could give. I chose a public place. Safe. Neutral. An upscale Italian restaurant Aunt Vivian once favored for her business meetings. When I arrived, they were already seated. My father stood quickly, pulling out my chair with exaggerated courtesy. My mother had reapplied her makeup, styled her hair. For a flicker of a second, I saw the woman from my childhood. We ordered a Pinot Noir, my father said brightly. Your mother always loved it. I don't drink wine, I replied, asking the waiter for water. A small boundary, maybe, but to me, it mattered. It said, I am not the child you left behind. The first 20 minutes dragged with shallow small talk. Questions about school, my job, my friends. I answered in clipped sentences, watching their faces closely, searching for any trace of the parents I once adored. Finally, my mother leaned in, her voice trembling. We owe you an explanation. She reached for my hand. I wrapped mine tighter around the water glass. What we did was wrong. We know that. My father cleared his throat. We were drowning. I had gambling debts. People were threatening us. Your mother was deep in depression. We convinced ourselves you'd be better off with Vivian. She had money. Stability, my mother added quickly. We had nothing but chaos. I whispered, almost to myself. I didn't want money. I wanted you. Silence. My father lowered his gaze. I got help. I've been clean 8 years. Your mother found the right medication. We built something steady. Modest, but steady. Tears welled in my mother's eyes. We thought about reaching out so many times, but the shame, the longer we waited, the harder it became. We didn't know how to face you. You said you knew I was with Vivian. How? Another glance passed between them. My father answered. We called social services. 6 months after we left. They told us you were with family, safe. We checked every few years. My stomach twisted. So they hadn't truly checked on me, only enough to soothe their consciences, enough to move on. We've regretted it every day, my mother insisted, a tear sliding down her cheek. Seeing you now, beautiful and successful, it breaks my heart that we missed all those years. The waiter appeared, breaking the moment as he laid steaming plates before us. I welcomed the reprieve. But the pause didn't last. Vivian did right by you, my father said, twirling pasta around his fork. Better than we ever could have. And now, my mother added lightly, she's left you set for life. The house alone must be worth $2 million. And the business, she shook her head, marveling. I've been running the business for years, I said, my tone flat. Of course you have, my father soothed. But there's a difference between helping and carrying it all yourself. The legal issues alone are overwhelming. Not to mention taxes, my mother added smoothly. Estate taxes can destroy fortunes if not handled properly. I studied them both, watching how they volleyed between concern and calculation. A rhythm, an agenda. We could help, my father offered. We've been through hard times, learned painful lessons about money. Lessons that could save you. I met his eyes coldly. That's an interesting pitch from the man who abandoned his family over gambling debts. He flinched, but recovered quickly. That's exactly why I know what not to do. My mother leaned closer, her voice dropping. We have a modest condo in Phoenix. Second mortgage. Medical bills, your father's arthritis isn't covered. It's been hard. The truth slid out at last. What exactly are you asking for? I demanded. They froze, startled by my bluntness. I was no longer a child they could soften with half-truths. We're not asking for anything, my father said quickly, but his eyes betrayed him. We just want to be part of your life again, my mother added softly. Then, almost as an afterthought, of course, if you wanted to help your parents get back on their feet, that would be a blessing. Maybe pay off the mortgage. 70,000 would clear it. And the medical bills, she glanced at my father, another 30. 100,000. I said flatly. That's the price of your redemption? They nodded, desperate. And what about my price? My voice cracked. 15 years of silence. 15 years of therapy. Nightmares that still wake me up in the dark. What number covers that? My mother's tears fell freely now. We know money can't fix the damage. We just want the chance to be a family again. Her words hung between us. And for the first time that night, I felt nothing but the cold clarity of truth that a family that begins with a cash transaction. That was all I could think. My father's face tightened, his voice hardening. You have to understand. We made mistakes, yes. But that fortune? That was ours too. Vivian was my sister. Our parents gave her the seed money for that business. I got nothing. So now you feel entitled to it, I said flatly. Not entitled. He backpedaled quickly. Just included. We're your parents, Elaine. Blood has weight.
Blood.
The word cut deep. I thought of Aunt Vivian, who had shown me what real love meant, not in words but in actions, in sacrifice, in consistency. I met his stare. You're right. Blood does mean something, but actions mean more. Dinner dragged on in the same rhythm, half manipulation, half suggestion. By dessert, they had casually listed their debts and floated the idea of joining me at the company. With salaries, of course. It was less reunion than negotiation. Outside the restaurant, the night air bit against my skin. My mother clung to me in another forced embrace, her voice a whisper in my ear. Think about what family really means, sweetheart. We all make mistakes. I drove home through a fog of headlights and noise, my mind turning over everything they had said. Parts of their story felt real. I remembered my mother's dark days, my father's long disappearances. But their timing, their rehearsed explanations, their quick turn toward money, it didn't sit right. At home, the answering machine blinked red. A new message. A woman's voice. Miss Winters, this is Sandra Kelly. I worked with your parents at First National Bank 15 years ago. I saw their names in connection with Vivian Hughes's obituary. Please call me before you make any agreements with them. There are things you should know. I froze. Her tone carried urgency, almost warning. That night, sleep never came. I sat hunched over my laptop, scouring guardianship laws until my eyes burned. Everything I read told me their claims were weak. I was long past 18. But then why had Thompson looked so uneasy? What documents was he gathering? At 3 a.m., restless, I found myself wandering into Aunt Vivian's study. The smell of old leather, paper, and polish lingered. Her world, now mine. I pulled open drawers, searching. In one locked compartment I had never touched, I found it. A folder labeled, simply, Winters. My chest tightened. Inside lay a history I had never known. The next day, I walked into Thompson's office carrying that folder like armor. My parents were already there, their faces tense. With them sat a thin man with slicked-back hair, his smile as slippery as his tone. Gerald Hoffman. He introduced himself. Their attorney. Just a precaution. Legal matters can get complicated, my father added with a forced smile. The room was different now. The warmth was gone. Thompson's assistant wheeled in a cart stacked with files and a laptop, as though preparing for trial. This wasn't family, it was battle. Thompson's voice cut through the tension. Before we begin, I should be clear. I was Vivian Hughes's attorney for 32 years. I am executor of her estate. And I am also Elaine's attorney through provisions made by Miss Hughes. Hoffman leaned forward smoothly. My clients are concerned about their daughter's sudden inheritance. As her legal guardians, they have responsibilities. Thompson adjusted his glasses.
Calm.
Controlled. That is exactly what we will address today. There is confusion about legal status. Let's walk through the record. He opened a thick file, pulling out documents that looked as heavy as stone. When Elaine came into Vivian's care, temporary guardianship was established through family court. Social services attempted repeated contact with both of you for permanent arrangements. My mother frowned. We were moving, dealing with issues. Indeed, Thompson said. After 6 months of failed contact, the court scheduled a hearing for permanent guardianship. Notices were sent to your last known addresses and published legally. My father shifted, his collar suddenly too tight. We never got any notices. Interesting, Thompson replied. He slid another document across the table. Because someone did appear in court representing you. A man named Louis Barker. He brought signed affidavits, allegedly from both of you, consenting to the guardianship transfer. A silence fell. My parents exchanged a quick, nervous glance before my father spoke. We never signed anything. Those signatures are forged. Thompson didn't flinch. Vivian thought the same. She hired a private investigator. The investigator located you both. He opened another file, thick with photographs and reports. Mr. Winters was documented at multiple Nevada casinos during that time. Mrs. Winters was working as a cocktail waitress. When approached directly about Elaine, you both confirmed your wish to terminate parental responsibilities. The blood drained from my mother's face. My father's jaw locked, his eyes darting between the papers and the floor. And furthermore, Thompson pressed on, his voice like steel. The investigator documented a payment of $15,000 from Louis Barker to Mr. Winters, the day after those affidavits were signed. That was an unrelated transaction. My father's protest cracked, weak and hollow. Thompson ignored him. Ms. Hughes continued investigations annually, monitoring your circumstances, determining if reconnection would ever serve Elaine's best interest. The truth was spreading across the table now, piece by piece, leaving no place for them to hide. Thompson's voice stayed even, but every word cut sharper than the last. I have reports spanning 15 years, he said, flipping through pages like he was peeling back layers of truth. Continued gambling, multiple evictions, job terminations, collection agencies at your door. Then he shifted. And perhaps most telling, Mrs. Winters documented attempts to contact Elaine when she turned 18. He slid a thin report toward me. 3 times she called Vivian's home. 3 times she hung up before speaking. And here, he pointed to a printed email. A message sent to Elaine's college account. It never reached her. Wrong address. I stared at the pages. Evidence of half-hearted gestures. Reaches that never really reached. My chest tightened with a strange blend of vindication and grief. They had tried, in their own fractured way. But never enough. Never with courage. Thompson's tone shifted, weightier now. Most importantly, he said, pulling out a sealed envelope, Vivian left this letter. To be opened only in this exact circumstance. My breath caught. The envelope bore my name, written in her familiar, graceful script. My throat tightened. Thompson asked gently, "Would you like to read it privately?" I shook my head. No, my fingers broke the seal, unfolding several pages filled with her voice. "My dearest Elaine," I began, reading aloud, my voice steadier than I felt. "If you are holding this letter, I am gone. And if your parents have reappeared now, it is no accident. Over the years, I have documented many times they attempted to use you as leverage against me for money." My mother let out a sharp sound of protest, but I pressed on. 6 months after you came to live with me, your father demanded $50,000, threatening to challenge guardianship if I refused. Against my better judgment, I paid. I feared a custody battle would scar you further. 3 years later, he returned. This time, more gambling debts. This time, I refused. Instead, I hired security. I lifted my eyes briefly. My father's gaze was buried in the floor, shame etched across his face. When you turned 16, I read on. Your mother called, claiming she had cancer. She said she needed money for treatment. My investigator confirmed this was false. Later, when you were accepted into college, they obtained your email address. They asked for tuition money, pretending it was about reconciling with you. I blocked their messages to protect you. My vision blurred with tears, but I forced myself to keep going. I never told you these things because I wanted you to heal without more betrayal. I hoped they would change. I hoped they would fight their demons and become the parents you deserved. But they did not. And now, if they are in this room, they will try again through guilt, through threats, through manipulation. The room was utterly still. Even the air felt heavy. I turned the last page. Thompson has every document needed to protect you. The guardianship was converted to legal adoption when you turned 16. I kept my name on the papers but did not change yours, hoping one day reconciliation might be possible. But Elaine, you have been my daughter in every way, legally and in love. They have no claim.
Not to you.
Not to your inheritance. The choice of whether to allow them into your life is yours. But guard yourself. Blood does not entitle anyone to the fruits of our labor, nor does it erase neglect. Family is not DNA. It is devotion. It is sacrifice. And by that measure, you are my child. Always. I am proud of the woman you have become. Trust yourself. All my love, Vivian. The words blurred before me. I folded the letter carefully, as though it might shatter in my hands. My heart ached with grief, pride, fury, and something else I couldn't yet name. Thompson cleared his throat softly, breaking the silence. I have the adoption papers here. Legally binding. Executed properly through family court. I also hold records of every financial solicitation described in that letter. He turned to face my parents, his gaze sharp. And Miss Hughes anticipated legal challenges. She wrote into her will a clause. If anyone contests these arrangements, the estate transfers in full to a foundation for abandoned children. In that case, Elaine inherits nothing, and neither does anyone else. Their lawyer's smooth facade cracked. He leaned close, whispering into my father's ear. My father's face went pale. We never knew about adoption. My father muttered finally, hollow. We were told guardianship only. By whom? Thompson asked, his voice cool. By social services, my mother said quickly. All communications are here, Thompson replied, patting a thick folder. Including your signed consent forms. My father's face darkened, anger rushing back in. This is ridiculous. You paid us off and stole our daughter. Thompson glanced up calmly, his tone unshaken. The security cameras in this office are recording. That statement directly contradicts your earlier claims of forgery. It could be taken as admission that you accepted payment to relinquish your parental rights. My father shot to his feet. This isn't over. We have rights. The word left my lips before I even thought. Dad. It felt foreign, jagged, unnatural in my mouth after so many years. I steadied myself. I found Vivian's file last night. I know about the other families, too. His expression faltered. Panic flickered. What other families? The Petersons in Colorado. The Galinskas in Oregon. And 3 more, families you tried to con by posing as relatives of the newly dead. Abandoning children. Hunting inheritances. It's your pattern. My mother broke then, her sobs shaking her shoulders. That's not true. We made mistakes with you, yes, but we would never. Save it. I cut in exhausted. Vivian kept everything. Reports. Files. Recordings of your calls. Demands for money. Every word. Silence fell again. Heavy. Final. Did you really believe she would leave me unprotected? My words landed heavy, and for the first time, I saw the shift in my father's eyes, from rage to calculation. His voice softened, false warmth creeping in. Elaine, there's been a misunderstanding. We can work this out. As a family.
No lawyers. No accusations.
I rose slowly from my chair. The weight of everything pressed down, but my spine stayed straight. I think we're done here. I turned to Thompson. Is there anything else I'm required to do today? No, he said firmly. The estate transfers to you cleanly. They have no legal standing. Not to challenge the adoption. Not to challenge the will. I nodded once. Then I want them gone. Elaine, please. My mother's voice cracked, trembling with desperation. Just give us a chance to explain. 15 years, I said quietly, cutting through her plea. You had 15 years to explain. You waited until money was involved. That tells me everything I need to know. Thompson pressed a button on his desk. 2 security officers stepped inside, their presence commanding, silent. These gentlemen will escort you out, Thompson said, his tone precise, businesslike. Any future contact with Miss Winters goes through my office. You can't do this, my father exploded, his face crimson. She's our daughter. I turned to him, steady and unflinching.
No.
I was your daughter. Now I am Vivian's. She taught me what value looks like, and it isn't measured in money. Security moved them toward the door. My mother twisted back, tears spilling. This isn't who we raised you to be. We gave you life. And Vivian gave me everything else, I replied, my voice breaking but strong. She gave me protection. She gave me love. She gave me freedom from people who see relationships as transactions. The door closed behind them. The silence was deafening. My knees buckled, and I collapsed into a chair. Thompson came around from behind his desk. He sat beside me, not as an attorney, but as something else.
His voice softened.
You should know. I'm your godfather. Vivian asked me to accept that role when she adopted you. I promised her I would look out for you long after she was gone. Fresh tears blurred my vision. Why didn't she ever tell me about the adoption? She worried you might feel she was trying to replace your parents. She wanted you to define family for yourself. I shook my head slowly. She influenced me more than anyone. Not with words. With consistency. She showed up when no one else did. Thompson nodded. We can file restraining orders. With their history and their motives, a judge would approve. Yes. My voice was steady now. That would be best. When I walked out of his office, I felt drained, hollowed out. But beneath the exhaustion was something startling: freedom. For years, I had clung to a fantasy of my parents' return. The fantasy had finally burned away. Not like I imagined as a child, but exactly as Vivian knew it would. She had protected me one final time. That evening, as I prepared dinner in Vivian's, my kitchen, headlights cut across the driveway. A rental car. My pulse quickened, but a strange calm anchored me. The restraining order wasn't yet served, but the truth was already mine. I opened the door before their fists could bruise it with ringing. I stayed on the threshold, blocking their entry. You can't be here. A restraining order is being filed. My father's voice erupted, raw and unpolished. We're still your parents. You owe us a conversation without lawyers breathing down your neck. I owe you nothing, I said evenly. But you have 5 minutes. Speak, then leave. Or I call the police. My mother pushed past me into the foyer, her eyes sweeping the space, measuring what could be claimed. We just want to understand why you're being so cold. We made a mistake years ago. A terrible mistake. We're trying to make amends. By attempting to seize my inheritance? My words sliced through her performance. Strange way to apologize. My father stormed in behind her, ignoring my objection. That woman poisoned you against us. Vivian resented me. She used you to hurt me. Vivian saved me, I snapped. She gave me stability, education, self-respect. She showed me that love is proven through actions, not just empty words. We loved you, my mother cried. We were sick. Depression is real. His gambling and addiction. We needed help, not judgment. I was 13, I shouted, my voice cracking at last. I needed parents, not excuses. Do you have any idea what it was like to wake up and find you both gone? To wait by the phone, hoping you'd call? To search the apartment for a note, a clue? Anything? My father's gaze fell. He couldn't meet my eyes. I checked the mailbox every single day for months. I kept thinking maybe, just maybe, you'd send a card. A birthday wish. A Christmas present. Anything to show I still mattered. Tears streamed down my mother's face. We thought about you every day. I shook my head. Thoughts without actions are worthless. Vivian never once said she loved me, not once in 15 years. But she showed up. Every appointment. Every school play. Every nightmare. Every application. She built trust with consistency. That's what love looks like. My father tried again, his voice dropping into that familiar salesman's charm. We're here now. We can build a relationship moving forward. Start fresh. Support each other. You're here now because Vivian died wealthy. My words hit like stone. If she had died poor, would you have even bothered? Their silence answered for them. Thompson showed me the reports. I continued. My voice was iron now. You knew where I was. Every year. 15 years. You knew. You chose not to contact me until there was money on the table. That's not fair, my mother protested, clutching her chest as though the accusation cut her. We were ashamed. We didn't know how to face you after what we had done. I studied her trembling hands, her practiced tears. And yet you found courage the very moment you learned about a multi-million-dollar inheritance. My tone was sharp, deliberate. Fascinating timing. My father's face hardened, his mask of civility cracking. You have no idea what we've endured. Years of poverty, scraping by, while my sister lived in luxury. Wealth that should have been shared with her family. Vivian built that wealth herself, I said, each word laced with steel. 16-hour days. Decades of sacrifice. She built an empire from nothing. What exactly did you contribute to deserve a share? I am her brother, he thundered, voice echoing against the walls. And your father? Biology, I said, my voice steady, Vivian's pragmatism flowing through me, is not an entitlement program. You don't abandon your child for 15 years and then show up expecting rewards. My mother crumpled into an antique chair, sobbing with a theatrical flourish. How did you become so cold? This isn't how we raised you. You didn't raise me, I said, the truth cutting clean. You left before the work was done. Vivian finished it. Outside, red and blue lights pulsed against the windows as a patrol car slowed into the driveway. I had asked Thompson to arrange police checks, knowing this moment would come. That will be the police, I told them. You should leave now. My father's eyes burned as he stepped closer. His hand clamped around my arm, his voice dripping with menace. This isn't over. You think you've won, but we can make your life very difficult. We can destroy her reputation. People will hear things about your precious Vivian. I yanked free, my fury rising. Every word you're saying is being recorded. I pointed to the corner of the foyer where a small lens glimmered. Vivian had cameras installed years ago, after your first attempt to extort her. His face drained of color as the realization sank in. Evidence. Proof. His threats now carried the weight of consequence. Come on, he muttered, grabbing my mother's arm. She isn't worth the trouble. Not worth the trouble. Dismissed like an inconvenience. Not a daughter. Not even human in their eyes. That single phrase confirmed what I had known all along. This was never about reconciliation. It was only about money. At the doorway, my mother turned back, her eyes wild. You'll regret this when you're alone, with nothing but money to keep you warm. Family is everything. I agree, I said. Vivian was my family. You were biological donors who abandoned your post. She earned the title you forfeited. They stumbled out into the flashing lights. Through the window, I watched the officer stop them in the driveway. The conversation was terse, brief. Then they drove away, swallowed by the night. I sank to the floor, trembling, adrenaline draining from my body. For 15 years, I had carried a wound that refused to heal, waiting for an explanation that would make sense of their betrayal. Tonight, I finally had my answer. It wasn't the answer I wanted, but it was the truth. And truth, no matter how sharp, brings clarity. An hour later, Thompson called. His voice was calm, measured. They've been served with the restraining order. They cannot come within 500 feet of you. They cannot call. They cannot write. They said it wasn't over, I whispered. That they could cause problems. Empty threats, he assured me. We have documentation. Years of their abandonment, their failed attempts at extortion. If they push this, they'll face criminal charges. No court will side with them. After the call, silence settled over the house. I walked its halls, no longer as a guest, but as someone stepping fully into ownership. The dining room where Vivian had taught me table manners. The study where she had shown me how to read contracts and balance ledgers. The garden where we had sat in quiet companionship, coffee steaming between us. Each room whispered her presence, her lessons etched into every corner. For the first time since her death, I entered her bedroom. It smelled faintly of lavender and old books. On the nightstand sat a wooden box I had never noticed before. I opened it with trembling hands. Inside lay the story of my life, carefully preserved by hers. Report cards, class photos, newspaper clippings of academic awards, the program for my college graduation, my name highlighted in ink. Beneath the stack was a sealed envelope with my name written in her familiar handwriting. Unlike the legal letter Thompson had given me, this one was intimate, handwritten. I unfolded it slowly. Elaine, it began. I have never been skilled at expressing emotions. My generation was not encouraged to speak them. But as I face the end of my life, I regret that limitation. So let me say now what should have been said years ago. I love you. Not out of obligation. Not out of duty. I love you because of who you are. Your resilience. Your intelligence. Your capacity for kindness, despite early betrayal. Watching you grow has been my life's greatest joy. I did not give you life, but watching you live has been my privilege. The adoption papers were not for your protection, but for my peace of mind. I wanted the world to know you were my daughter, in every way that matters.
Be well. Be wise.
Be happy, Mom. That word, Mom. A word she never spoke, yet a word she had earned long ago. Seeing it written shattered something inside me. The dam broke. I wept until I could no longer breathe. Not for the parents who had returned out of greed, but for the woman who never claimed the title, yet embodied it in every way. 6 months have passed since that night. My biological parents retreated to Arizona after one failed attempt to sell stories about Vivian. The editor they approached was a longtime friend of hers. He called Thompson before the ink was dry. Their lies went nowhere. The house feels different now. Not like a shrine. Not like a burden. It feels like mine that I've begun reshaping the house into something that feels like mine. Some rooms carry Vivian's elegance untouched, while others now bear pieces of me, softer colors, new fabrics, photographs I've taken. The formal dining room, where Vivian once hosted long business dinners under the glow of crystal chandeliers, now doubles as my office. Antique mahogany still dominates the space, but beside it hums a bank of monitors, glowing screens that would have made Vivian frown and laugh at the same time. The business continues to grow. I've introduced modern systems Vivian never quite trusted, digital marketing campaigns, online platforms, streamlined inventory management. What once felt like a guarded empire now breathes in rhythm with the world. 2 new stores have opened their doors, buzzing with life. The employees who once looked to Vivian now look to me. Many have told me they see her in my decisions, in my way of leading. It comforts me. It also humbles me. The most meaningful step has been the Vivian Hughes Foundation for Family Reconnection. I carved it out of the inheritance, turning money into mission. We help children who have been left behind, kids who know the sting of abandonment. Therapy, education, a roof when they age out of foster care. It isn't charity, it's repair. It's the work Vivian did for me multiplied. Through the foundation, I've met others with stories that mirror my own. Some reconcile with their biological families. Others craft chosen families from mentors and friends. Each path is different, but the need is the same: to be seen, to be held, to belong. Therapy has continued, too. My sessions with Dr. Freeman are less about the original wound now, and more about the echoes my parents' return stirred up. She told me something that lingers. Closure doesn't always come the way you expect. The fantasy of reconciliation can sustain us for a time, but reality rarely matches the dream. Growth often comes from accepting what cannot be fixed and building something new. Her words cut sharp, but they also freed me. 3 months ago, a letter arrived from my mother. This one wasn't filled with demands. No mention of money. Just a quiet apology. Regret. Almost human. I haven't answered. I may never. The envelope sits in the drawer of my desk, not destroyed, not embraced, just waiting while I decide what, if anything, I want to do with it. In the meantime, I've drawn closer to people I once overlooked. Mrs. Bentley, Vivian's housekeeper, still comes twice a week. She's begun to share stories, pieces of Vivian from before I entered her life. One day she said, "She was terrified when you first arrived. She told me she had never wanted children. Didn't think she had the temperament. But that first night, I found her at 3 a.m. in the kitchen, reading child development books online." That image, the woman I knew as steel and certainty, secretly panicked, desperately researching how to love me, broke me open. She hadn't sought the responsibility, but she chose it anyway. She did what my biological parents could not. She stayed. She learned.
She tried.
Thompson has become a steady presence too. The godfather role he once held on paper has deepened into something real. We share dinners, long talks. His formality has softened into warmth. Not long ago, as we reviewed the Foundation's first report, he looked at me and said, "Vivian would be proud, not just of your business acumen, but of your resilience. She worried that your early wounds might harden you, but you've turned them into something that heals others." I've even started dating again. Nothing serious yet, but different this time. My boundaries are clearer. My expectations sharper. Vivian taught me what love looks like. Not words tossed carelessly, but actions repeated daily. Commitment shown, not claimed. The greatest change, though, has been inside me. For 15 years, I carried one question like a stone in my chest. Why did they leave me? That question has lost its power. I see now that their leaving was about their limits, not my worth. What matters more is that Vivian stayed. She made the harder choice. She showed up every day. That was love. That was family. Last weekend, I visited her grave. Black granite. Simple. Dignified, exactly as she wanted. Beneath her name, I added one word: Mother. Standing there, flowers in my hands, I finally understood. Family is not biology. It is not paperwork. It is the 1,000 choices someone makes when they decide to stay. Who comes back? Who speaks the truth? Who creates safety instead of chaos? Vivian showed me that wealth isn't just financial. Real abundance is integrity. Promises kept. Trust honored. She gave me far more than property or money. She left me a model for a life of purpose and dignity. She proved that chosen family can be stronger than blood. And that love, even when quiet, can shape everything. I don't know if my biological parents regret their actions or just regret losing access to Vivian's fortune. But I've realized it no longer matters. Their motives don't define me. My choices do. The people I let in. The legacy I build. So I'll leave you with a question. Have you ever had to redefine what family means? Do you believe blood alone demands forgiveness? Or do you believe, as I do, that love is earned through consistent care and respect? If this story touched you, please like and subscribe. Share it with someone who may need to hear it. Because sometimes the family we choose brings more healing than the family we're born into.